my group, but they kicked me off Facebook.
Yep. And it's weird to try to find out, like, why some people get blocked and some people get suppressed and why others don't. Because there's plenty of controversial stuff that gets out.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, go ahead and hit that live. I'm ready.
We should be live now.
Okay.
It might take
excellent.
a second or two for it to populate. Let's see. Yep. Looks like it's live. And I posted it a few places too, so we'll get plenty of people in here at some point.
I'm pretty sure I'll see some familiar faces here in a minute. Let me log on to your channel. I still don't get how YouTube suggests things. Some of the videos that pop up on my feed are. I mean, does YouTube know who I am? Why would you even send that to me?
I mean, I've heard people say that the social media sites are scraping their voice conversations. Like they'll talk about something, then it will pop up. Some people think they're decoding our thoughts. I have no idea. I just know, like, if I start like being about something, like we're looking for land right now, so all of a sudden now somehow all the sites got information that we're looking for land. So like house stuff, land stuff, properties for sale, all over the place just pops up.
Well, I get that. I'm adding a comment right now. Hi guys, glad to be here.
So welcome, Jason. I'm glad you finally were able to make it here. I think I reached out to you like 2 or 3 months ago to see if you wanted to come on, and that didn't happen for whatever reason. But I'm happy you're here now, and I haven't done shows for a long time. Like I stopped. I sort of like am laying a little bit more low now with shows and stuff. But whenever somebody comes around that I see has something new going on, then I'm usually like more apt to try and talk to somebody, because from what I see in this reality, there's a whole bunch of same old. And if somebody comes around and has a new idea, especially regarding the possible structure of the reality or our setting, how we got here, things like that, then I'm always fascinated to hear a new perspective. And yours is very interesting.
Well, I appreciate it. One of the themes of my Archaix channel is seeing the old world through new eyes. I don't really bring to the table a lot of new, innovative concepts. What I'm doing is bringing back to public awareness things that were openly discussed in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century. And I cite those books and materials. It's just we have deviated so far with our own technical frames of reference have us. They basically control our narratives. So when people go to Archaix and they see these concepts that are so new to them, and they think I'm the innovator, I'm not. A case in point is, man, I get so many emails I can't answer them just on the topic of the vapor canopy techniques, the vapor canopy biosphere, and there's nothing new about that. So I'm about to release a video late tonight or early in the morning. It's already been done, but it's showing all the old historians, all the very old books that all openly talk about the vapor canopy line. And that's just one example. I don't really bring a lot of newness to the arena. I just really don't. I'm just bringing all the old things back into remembrance.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, because the reason for that very likely is because of the proliferation of tablets and iPhones and computers and everything like that. And, you know, people don't get their nose in books as often, I think. Maybe some people do, but not as many people do. And you seem to have had access to... Well, actually, I have a question first. What was it that started you, like, looking specifically for our history as regards the last few hundred years? Like, what started you?
Well, I was a fundamentalist Southern Baptist Christian, and I really thought the Bible was true, and I really thought that the version of reality that had been conveyed to me was real. Mm-hmm. So this is what I set out to prove. I was 100% involved in confirmation bias. I read every old book that I could come across. I had benefactors that were sending me these old books, and I was in a prison, where old books abound. They are everywhere. They are stuck in basements and old libraries. Prisoners don't throw away books. They keep them forever. Use them for coffee table stands. They use them to write their letters on, and they don't even know the value. I mean, I have met guys in prison that used a old book from 1883 that was in its third reprinting, but the original was like 1782, and they used it to hold up a coffee pot, and then exchanged that treasure. They gave me that treasure for a bag of $2.75 Maxwell House coffee. This happened over and over and over. These guys don't know what treasures they had, so I took advantage of them, and I was able to data mine all this material, but it never had any intrinsic value to me. A book doesn't mean anything to me. It's the data that derives from it. When I pull out the bibliographic material and anything of interest in that book, I trade the book off for the next book I'm going to research. Then I trade that book off for it. My library has never been very much because it's always in fluid. It's always moving. I'm always trading, and this activity basically created an informed field over my life to where reality itself reciprocated and sent to me all these books even when I wasn't looking for them. It's like I sent this rhythm out into the cosmos, and the cosmos responded, and it just kept sending me books and materials and magazines and old periodicals and putting me in contact with people who were fascinated with the things I was writing even before I was published. I was just sending them out to different organizations and institutes, and most of them were Christian. But to answer your question, it came to a tipping point where I had to admit that what I'm finding does not comport with what I've been told. And this entire biblical narrative is too perfectly structured. And the arithmetic that is included in the Bible is coded. And all this I reveal in my videos, and I show it. I don't just make the claims. I have to show this material, and in my published books. It was a very difficult process divorcing myself from a paradigm for which I was born into and raised into. And it wasn't easy. And I even went through a very dark spell for about 6 or 7 months when I finally woke up one morning and realized, okay, well, you know what? This is all bullshit. And I had to reassess all my data. I had to go back through everything to find some new perspective. And that's when I started attaching all the arithmetic to it.
So when you talk about confirmation bias, I know the reality itself does sort of help propagate your little bubble with basically your own thoughts and movements, perceptions, interactions with other people. What is it do you think that pushed you beyond that little bubble of confirmation bias? Because you can go really far in that direction. You know, some people take it to their grave as far as the Christianity narrative. Like, what was it that popped you out of it?
There are 17 or 18 different historians today for which we have all their records. That has never been secret. Those books still remain today in Latin. And they were all alive and reporting events that were all happening as far as natural phenomena, government, socio-political affairs, administrative affairs in Rome. We have these writers' writings today, and many different scholars quote them. But the general public does not read scholarly monographs. They don't want to. It's too boring. The general public really doesn't realize that almost 100% of all biblical scholars are not even Christian. These biblical scholars go very, very deep into this material, where all these historians who were alive at the time never mentioned anything. These men were writing about earthquakes anywhere on the Italian peninsula, eclipses. They were writing about all this phenomena. They were writing about socio-political. Many of them were writing about Jewish material because there was a lot of contention with Jewish populations in Roman provinces all the way into Rome at this time period. And yet not one of these men ever knew anything about any of the events that's portrayed in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. None of the writers of the day mention any of the writers that are mentioned in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These writings of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these gospel narratives of the life of Jesus, appear 150 years later, but they seem to be all basically they seem to be elaborated versions with a lot of interpolations from a core document that scholars call the Q document. This has been determined over 100 years ago as being the Gospel of Markian, which is, I have read, the Gospel of Markian is fantastic. It has a full life of Jesus, his teachings, his parables. It is fantastic. It's a literary masterwork. However, there's not a single supernatural event in that narrative. All these were added later. All these miracles and raising the dead and crucifixion, sun darkening, earthquake, all these major things that were attached 150 years after the life of this man or this prophet. This is, and you have to understand, I'm not the one coming up with all this. This is everything that I have derived from my research, and in my videos, I cite the actual historians that say these things and what texts that they're examining and cross-reference. This is what woke me up, that I can't ignore such a vast body of evidence from all these historians when it's shown over and over and over that what we have been led to believe is true by the church isn't what was historically correct at the time.
So, when did the Gospel of Markian appear? How many years after Jesus' life?
Gospel of Markian, within a century. It was within a century.
And then 50 years after that, then the other Gospels start getting added to and exaggerated.
Yes, the Gospel of Markian is fantastic. The main body of historians was about 110 years ago. One of them was John Waite. John Waite wrote a book that's over 600 pages of nothing but just pure historical data. It is a fascinating book, and it's highly recommended by me to anybody who wants to educate themselves on how early Christianity developed. John Waite's book over 100 years ago is titled The First 200 Years. That's the name of the book.
How do you spell his name?
His name is John Waite, W-A-I-T-E.
And the first what?
The First 200 Years of Christianity.
Okay.
Or actually the title is The First 200 Years of the Christian Religion. This man goes in and cites Polycarp, Ignatius, Augustine, Jerome. He goes deep. He gets Judaicus. He goes in and shows the early Gnostic records, how many of them were altered and changed and became later Christian documents in the New Testament. He goes in and shows all the elements of the Gospel of Markian and the Q document, and how these two source materials were absolutely used to construct the book of Mark, and that Mark was used to construct the book of Luke, and that Luke and Mark were used to construct the book of Matthew. But John is the anomaly, because John is, of the four synoptic Gospels, John is the only one that's different than the other three. And the elements in John's Gospel are entirely of the Gnosis. It's almost an entire Gospel from the perspective of the Gnostics, not from the perspective of the early Christians, which were basically a social movement called the Way, which had stemmed from older ancient Buddhist traditions. Buddhism, contrary to popular belief, most Christian seminaries, they don't teach these guys coming up in the seminaries the true socio-political conditions that were existing in the time. And that was, Osaka of India had sent 30,000 Buddhist missionaries all over the Near East and Mediterranean. They had set up shrines and temples. In the days of Jesus, Buddhism was it was on fire. It was everywhere throughout the Levant, but there's not a hint of it anywhere in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But in the historical record, it's everywhere. And its chief central location outside of India was Antioch. And Antioch is the city that we find out in the New Testament was the birthplace of Christianity. And the whole thing is very fascinating. I would recommend John Waite to anybody who wants a serious. Now, I do have my Dark Scriptures playlist. If you want to educate yourself on all these things, it's in those videos. But if you want to get to the core data and see the source materials and what scholars were finding over 100 years ago about the unfolding of the Christian religion and what was admitted in the early Roman church councils and how they had to omit things to divorce themselves from the deceit that they had foisted upon early people, is that you have to read these books from over 100 years ago. And I would start, because he cites over 200 sources, you need to start with John Waite.
Okay. Yeah, I've listened to quite a few of your videos over the last I don't know, a few months. And in general, I'm not really like a history buff or anything like that. Like, as I was growing up, I sort of caught a whiff of like something gross in the bulk of the material that was getting handed out, getting passed out, and it just turned me off to try and consume this literature in the first place, because that takes time to do that, right? And if I have to sit there and try to parse it and determine which is real, which isn't, then I'm better off to spend my time, doing my own thing. But I have been listening to quite a bit of your stuff and attempting to ingest as much as I can, but there's so much information. It's very difficult to hold on. I have to get like a bunch of passes to learn anything. Like, that's how I learned chess too. I play game after game after game after game, and then eventually, like, the key parts of it stick to me.
Hey, let me interject, because you make a good point without actually making. Listen, I have tried to stress to my listeners, Gary, that I enjoy the boring history. I enjoy putting out the information. I enjoy all this because I like to show the structuring of the things that I found. But it's not necessary, Gary. I try to tell people all the time. I says, look, you can listen to my videos, but you're not compelled to go deeper. I said, life is far more valuable than spending it trying to chase truths from fiction. Mm-hmm. We like to do that because we are creatures of curiosity. But the truth is, man, we are dynamic, spiritual, immortal beings, and all of this is nothing but dressing. And all we do in analyzing this dressing, we do come to fundamental truths. But what it really boils down to is there is one thing, although I'm not a Christian by any contemporary interpretation of the definition, there's still one commandment that can't be defied, that I live by. Treat every man as you would treat yourself. I mean, the man said that himself. Now, Jesus isn't the only one that said that. That exact phraseology has been found in more ancient texts, but the principle still applies.
Yeah.
What you're saying to me right now about not being a historian and all that is all I'm trying to convey to you is you don't have to be a mathematician, you don't have to be a historian, you don't have to be anything but Gary Warmerdam, because in the end, how you treat other informed fields in your area of contact, other immortals that are trapped in this morass with you, is the only thing you will ever be judged by, because knowledge is not the meaning of life. And the more we know, really, all it does is make us hit walls to admit that, man, we really don't know a whole lot. It's just, it's a Mandelbrot. Knowledge is like a Mandelbrot set. The more we find out, the more we realize we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you start layering up the ego, right? The little video game character person, you got different clothes on and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just an avatar. And I try to get people who get frustrated because they don't understand a concept or they don't understand it or whatever. I try to convey to them, this is why I have a variety of videos. At first, all I wanted to do is just go hard with history, go hard with arithmetic, show that there was some holographic sequencing in here. But then it was my own listeners and their emails and the comments I saw on YouTube and Facebook that made me start doing, okay, you know what? I need to start hitting these guys with some more spiritual stuff because they're losing the meaning here. Mm-hmm. I enjoy putting all this material out, but I'm telling you now, you can take Jason and archaic data out of the equation, and it means nothing. It doesn't matter. I'm not bringing anything that's going to save you. All I'm doing is showing you, basically, this is what I found. We live in a false reality. It's not because I believe in any scientific interpretation of hologram theory or none of that, simulation theory. It's because I have found mathematical structuring that is too perfect, encoded within our past. That's what my whole, that sums up my entire channel. That's it. That was it right there. And the other message in my channel is that you're an immortal being and nothing that I just told you matters. Simple as that.
Yeah. We're on pretty much the same page. I mean, for my main thing, what I look for in other people and other channels is I look for, number one, the spark. So you got some type of life in you, then that's good. And then number two, curiosity. You can take all of this loads of programming that you've had since birth, and you can still see outside of it. Like, if I see that, those two things paired together, and you have some power, like you can project yourself a little bit, then I want to listen to you, because I don't, like you said, the the historical record, it does matter, but being that if we're considering we're living in a matrix, then the historical record is literally a figment of our collective matrix imagination. So that doesn't have the utmost of importance, but what does have importance is how we behave ourselves now and how we actually make this thing livable, because it's not been livable for the most part. Like, it's difficult to survive in here, let alone, you know, actually be able to attract the things that you need to make a good life and be able to have good relationships with your family and friends when half the people can't understand anything that you're saying because, like, they're running all these scripts and they're believing the news and whatever. Like, it's not the easiest thing. So I like that. I just like it when new people come to the table that have some new things to say, and you know, we can gain some bits of information and some new ways forward, basically. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. That's I've been only because people have been making so many suggestions. I have been watching videos on other channels. It's not something I've ever made a habit of because there's only so many hours in a day. I just can't do all. I have too much to do. But yeah, I've noticed some very unique personalities across YouTube, but even more so, I have found very unique personalities just in the comment sections of my videos. You meet some real characters on YouTube. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But there's I don't want to oversimplify my position. Gary, I really believe that the problem humans have today, when I say humans, I'm talking about all of us in the collective, the problem we have is that we're not distinguishing between which reality we're in. And this is a principal message that runs through a thread through many of my We Immortal videos. Mm-hmm. Let me explain, because this is what people are having a problem with, especially with my message. Because you wake up in the morning and you look around, you automatically assume that you're living in one reality and one existence. But this is not what I have found. I have found that every second of our awakeness, while we're alive and moving around, we are existing in two simultaneous but very different and distinct realities. And they react to us in very different ways. They operate with totally different dynamics. The systems are cohesive, they're made to go together, but they are totally antithetical to any type of peace. That actually cause problems. Negative default programming, dungeon programming, these concepts I've gone over and over.
I watched that video.
In my videos.
Yep.
The problem people have, and the reason they can't align with who they want to be, is because they're not recognizing these two separate realities. One of those realities is the one that world history and all this holographic programming that I have documented and I've showed in all my materials. That is the reality that we're experiencing as we flow through a collective medium. It's like a giant reality tunnel with all the laws of physics. Every one of us are moving and we're all suffering the same events. Worldwide events are already scripted into this narrative. We're living through these events. In the collective, there are many things in this world we all experience together. But in the personal, there is a dynamic field around you that makes you absolutely distinct from anything else around you. You are totally separate in that one element where you can think for yourself, you can intuit things, by virtue of imagination, you can create informed fields. Through empathy, you can feel the life in that informed field. Through physical activity, your auric field can send a thought out and reality will reciprocate. Now the collective hologram reacts to the individual instead of the individual always being led by the collective. When people start to realize that there's two distinct realities and both of them apply to you, then they'll start understanding that, man, we really can make things happen. But it always starts from the self. There is absolutely nothing you can do for another. You can share information from your informed field, but you can't change anyone. You can't change their opinion by thought and by force. You can by evidence. You can by cognition if they start assuming the data themselves. But every single one of us is basically a universe unto ourselves. And when we start acting like that universe, what do universes do? They build, they create, they share. Once you start doing that, then reality will reciprocate. Other people will realize, wait a minute, here's the reality I'm in, but what's this? What's happening here? And people gravitate around that person. Then they start orbiting around that personality. Next thing you know, an entirely new reality tunnel has been created where all these people share the same fundamentals, but they are untouched by the collective. The collective no longer governs them. It no longer rules them. They no longer fear it. And this is the principal message of my Phoenix phenomenon. Many people were getting depressed because I was just going into overkill, showing all this historical data about this 138-year periodicity of some really harrowing shit that happens to our world. Not always the whole world, just somewhere in the world suffers this every 138 years. And then I had to explain to my listeners, listen, man, y'all are focusing on the wrong thing. I'm just documenting all this to show you what happens to the collective. I wasn't assuming that you're a part of that collective because you're listening to me. If you're an errant, if you're truly an immortal, and you truly recognize that you're a force dynamic independent of what goes on around you, then there's nothing to fear. There's no apocalypse to fear. There's no elite to fear. None of that. So this is the problem I have in trying to get the message out. I have two different messages. One is for the collective and everything it's been going through. One is for the individual. But so many people get tripped up on it. They get confused.
Yeah, I agree with you. For some reason, and Zoom hasn't done this to me for a long time, but it's trying to tell me that I'll be up in 10 minutes. So basically, we can just stop and re-up it and go for another hour or something. I don't know why this is doing this, because I've had so many shows, and we've had shows go 2-3 hours, whatever.
Oh, you know what? I believe it was Logan that told me that Zoom had changed some of their settings. It was either Logan or Autodidactic. One of them told me that Zoom was abbreviating the time to 40 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like very long at all. What time is it? It's only 6:30. Yeah, so we can re-up twice if you want to go longer than 2 hours. Like, it's so long as it keeps letting us redo the length. And,
I no problem with it. If there's an interruption, I'll be right here.
Okay, so we have basically 10 minutes till we gotta re-up it. I wanted to ask you, where did you come up with informed field, and where did you come up with reality tunnel? Is that something you coined?
Okay, I really went into a deep dive into the material of P.D. Ouspensky, Tertium Organum. Also, I consider myself a student of Ishak Bentov, who wrote Stalking the Wild Pendulum. Other writers who have basically subscribed to the concept that our reality is very holographic and that all our physics constants act like hologram principles more than they do actual hardcore physical laws structuring. So there are so many different astrophysics and physics authors that I have followed in the past, people who have been alive in the past 150 years, because these concepts are not new, Gary. Men were thinking about this and publishing books in the 1890s about how unreal the structuring of our reality was. And so I delved deep into these books, and I realized, wait a minute, man, these guys are talking about physics constants, but most of them were doing it from the perspective of astronomy. Mm-hmm. The shift for me is when I applied it to world history and the dates that I saw on a calculator between two historical events, and I measured it mathematically, and I realized the same thing they're talking about, these laws that are affecting us in the cosmos, are the exact same ones that I'm finding in the structuring of historical events. Then I went further to, wait a minute, if that's true, then human activity also must abide by these precepts. These reality tunnels and this structuring and these informed fields, every bit of this, man, is scientific. Even now, if you mention informed field to a physicist, he knows exactly what you're talking about.
That's 100%. Funny. I've never heard of that. Are you talking about the Ouspensky that was Gurdjieff's student, or is that the same person?
Yes.
Okay.
P.D. Ouspensky.
I've read lots of Gurdjieff. I don't know if I think I may have an Ouspensky book. I don't remember for sure, but I read lots of Gurdjieff back in the days.
Well, Gurdjieff is just as good, and I've only read one of his books. But hey, if I do get cut off right here on the Zoom, you're gonna have to send me a new Zoom link.
I will. Yeah, we've got 6 minutes left. I'm gonna look through the comments really quick and see if we have anything.
Oh, we got a bunch of comments, brother. Got a bunch of those.
YouTube is listening. I'm from Decode Your Reality, Logan Jason. Is that you went on his show?
Yeah, I was on his show for he and I are about to go. I'm about to go on Logan on June 1st. Logan and I are doing a special presentation on Phoenix.
Okay.
He's been going deep. He's been digging for new stuff. He sent me an email with all kinds of new stuff. Like, wow, man, we may as well do a video on that.
I always hear you talking about square peg like every single video I hear of you.
There's square peg divergent right there. Look, listen, I was doing an isometric projection analysis, which is a species of date. It's a date sequence prediction where I was showing how modern events right now could have easily been predicted if we would have been using this method. And she picked up the torch and has done so many of them herself. If you send, you got square peg right here. If you send her a message, she can send you some charts she's done. That's pretty interesting. Just basically showing the structuring of modern socio-political events and how they're scripted 100%. I mean, I have video after video after video showing the structuring, but she picked up the torch and she's doing it now.
And sports events too. You said were also scripted.
We did that last year. I was really upset to find out that the NFL published in a court decision that they are allowed to throw games because the NFL is considered entertainment by law. I was so pissed when I read that. I quit doing my game series deals on NFL predictions. There are people right now in your thread that was with me when I was doing the game series deals. We hit up to 92% accuracy on the weekly NFL games, running 13 to 15 game predictions a week. And then it just, it's crazy.
So you could make a bunch of money off that, right? Till somebody caught you.
Well, several people did. I know several people, maybe a couple in this thread right here that did. And we're not going to I don't really promote the gambling deal. It's not my message. My message is that you live in a scripted reality, and this can be shown from multiple different perspectives. Not just history, not just physics, not just science, not just ancient quotes. It can be shown even modern mathematical examples, such as I show in the Archaic Paradox video, where I show a simple arithmetic exercise shows that we live in a holographic universe.
You divide the two difference between 2 years by pi and then add that to the second year? Is that what you're talking about?
That's a special species of date sequence prediction. It's not the standard date sequence prediction type. They probably never thought about doing it that way. But you can take two similar events in history, and you can divide the number of days or the number of months or the number of years between those events, and you can divide it by phi or pi or curvature, which is 5.08, which is 1.618 times 3.14. Mm-hmm. If you do that, you add that to the second date, which is your X2 factor, and it will come up with a third date, which is a future date. Something will occur on that date, which is basically a holographic merging of the two concepts of the two dates you measure.
Can you do it again? Can you do it again for like a fourth date, or does it only work between 1, 2, and make a third?
Actually, it's manifold. We live in a multi-dimensional holography.
So it's like a golden ratio type spiral thing.
Actually, enter in hundreds of these X factor dates. Create a computer program that will measure them all by phi, pi, and curvature, and produce all kinds of future deals. This may be very close to what the Looking Glass project did. I really don't know because I don't have the specifics of what they did, but I'm fairly confident that my own system is far more accurate than their Looking Glass system. Because if their Looking Glass system was truly operating at optimum, then events wouldn't be unfolding the way they are right now.
You mean whereas they wouldn't be acting confused and frustrated and
Exactly. Yeah. I tell my listeners a lot. Listen, everything that's happening in the world right now is because reality tunnels are collapsing. Even AIX is confused. AIX has been befuddled. There's too much energy output being spread out because too many people are waking up, and that requires a tremendous amount of power going in so many different directions. And we're in a control system with a finite amount of power. This is why the resets happen. I know you and I have never talked about this, but this is another subject matter of my channel. These resets occur occur frequently because AIX loses control, because it can no longer govern over the masses. Creating a reality tunnel by which 10 million people share is the very low energy output. It can do that. We can call that Christianity. We can call that Islam. We can call that communism, or we can call it Republican ultra-right conservatism. It doesn't matter. As long as you fit into a niche, you're in a controlled reality tunnel. A reality tunnel already has its protocol set. The AIX system doesn't have to build anything, so it's very easy to maintain that. What's hard is when people start waking up and going in multiple different directions. Now AIX has to create multiple different realities. That costs energy. After a while, it can't do it no more, and it will reboot the system. And on the inside of the hologram, we interpret this as a reset. And that reset is volcanoes, earthquakes, liquefaction, plagues, invasion, great war.
We're about to get rebooted ourselves, Jason. So if we could come back, and I'll send you another link. We'll start section 2.
Good time for a reset.
See you in a little bit.
Man. All right.
We'll talk about AIX in the next one.
Okay.
Okay, one sec. So if everybody could just hold tight in the chat, you guys are not going to experience anything, any interruption other than switching over this away. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming by. I don't know if I said a proper hello yet, but thank you for being here. Jason should be back in just a moment. Can you guys hear him okay? Because it's coming out of my computer audio, and my computer audio is not the greatest. I have a good mic, but Drinking Monster, yes. Welcome back. Welcome back for segment 2.
Loud and clear.
Yep.
That was a fast reset. We survived.
Okay. So, Artificial Intelligence X, there's a whole bunch of us, including myself, who sort of have felt like something is off, and simulation theory explained a lot of the weird stuff. People say, you know, the Mandela effect explains simulation theory because the reality itself is trying to juggle and toggle between multiple reality streams and filter stuff out, filter stuff in to try to keep it a sort of cohesive field.
That is a very good word. I have never heard that word used to describe what you just said. Toggle. Toggle is an excellent explanation for what is happening. Like something is toggling in. What you just said reminds me that I have tried to convey to people that always send me emails about UFOs and what's my opinion on UFOs and all that. And I try to tell people, I'm going to borrow that from you now, toggle. But I have explained UFO activity, defying physics, changing its shape, changing its opacity, being able to see through it sometimes and not others, being able to appear solid and like a dome or a saucer like it would be expected to look like, to change forms, move erratically, defy physics and all that, and then sometimes completely cause vanishings of aircraft, boats, or people or cars. Now, this has been documented so much since the days of Jacques Vallée in the 1960s. There were many books about UFOs and deal. To me, I don't believe that these are vehicles. I don't believe they're occupied. They defy too much. To me, they're almost like what you're saying here. It's like something's toggling in a rangefinder. And once that rangefinder zeroes in on what it needs to zero in on, it opens up a dimensional envelope and sucks whatever it is. A person disappears. A whole aircraft, Malaysian aircraft vanishes. A whole ship on Lake Erie in full sight of another ship's captain vanishes when lights are seen in the sky. We have documented this over and over and over and over. These UFO activity events where it seems like it's not a vehicle, it's a rangefinder. And once it gets to where it needs to, it does something to where the holography just in that one locality is altered, and whatever's there vanishes. Goes into a dimensional envelope, is totally taken out of the simulation.
I wonder if it's a sort of a parallels thing where there's a bunch of parallel realities happening and divergent choices sort of like bring people into one out of the other one, and you're just seeing like your reality update itself to a version that doesn't include that particular boat or ship, but it is in a different one, maybe.
Well, I can give a historical example of that. One that has perplexed me to no end is that the amount of data that Hans Bellamy, Hans Boehringer, Emmanuel Velikovsky, Harold T. Wilkins, and myself, I probably documented more than any of them because I use them as source materials on top of everything else I've discovered. But the amount of core data that the ancient world universally knew that the year was 360 days, and that no one knew before the 8th century BC or had ever heard of a year that was 365 or 365.25 days. Now, all of a sudden, we have a disaster that is recorded in Assyrian records. They said a new age occurred. The precise timing was a Phoenix episode, and I've documented it. Suddenly, the year changes to 365.25, not just in one place, not just in one region, not just in one continent, but the entire world changed their calendars to 365 days. And I have documented this so extensively. My published books I have whole chapters dedicated to this.
Yeah,
now,
I remember you saying that it didn't transfer over, like the math didn't make sense as for the...
Yeah, from that event. That's what I'm trying to tell you now. It's an example of what you're talking about. We have data points that are so powerful, they form a perfect data set that shows the world was 360 days a year for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. Then we have several data points that form a data set that shows a cataclysm happened on this date. And on this date comports exactly with an event in the Bible when King Hezekiah called his prophet Isaiah into the throne room and asked him to explain what he was seeing. And Isaiah looked on the floor, and they saw that the sundial of Ahaz on the floor, the shadow had not only stopped moving, but it retrograded 10 degrees. Since that event in 713 BC, the year has changed to 365. So now we have a whole nother bunch of data points that create an unbroken data set with many source materials that show that the year changed right then and there. And that since then, the year has not changed. It's always been 365.25. The problem with this is that if we were living in a holographic reality that's moving in one direction, and all of a sudden somebody introduced this edit, then how is it even possible that I have data points on both sides that show at the exact time of year that these incredible 138-year patterns, these 414-year patterns, these 552-year patterns, Phoenix cycles, these 792-year Nemesis X patterns are unbroken? It's impossible because within 100 years, the addition of 5.25 days to every single year would have altered all these events in the future. They would have never happened in the month of May, in the month of November repetitively.
Yeah,
they would also have never happened on the key years. every 138 years, every 792 years. It would have fundamentally changed.
It would be a difference of like 1 year, right? 1 to 2 years in totality.
Well, after 1,000 years, you're looking at a whole generation off.
Yeah.
But my 510-page chronicon is date specific. I mean, everything is dated to the exact year, and I show exactly and with source materials how these dates are derived. So to have this amount of data points going forward and backward in time to a central event where everything was changed, and yet nothing was changed that flowed over that event. The mathematics is still perfect. Only in a hologram could two different architecturally mathematic realities coexist. That's only in a hologram.
That's weird. So the 138 number itself somehow supersedes the fact that the number of days in the year is now less.
100%. Now you're thinking like me. This is what changed all my thinking. Because I know for a fact and have openly challenged anybody to refute my theory. Just look at my data. That 138-year period never changed because it was seen again in 1626. It was seen again in 1764. It was recorded in 1902. That's why I know it's going to be back in 2040. It's never changed. But because the year changed, it's not possible. It's not possible for it to have appeared in 522. It's not possible for it to have appeared in 384. It's not possible for it to have appeared in 108 AD, but it did. It's not possible for it to have appeared in 1350 or 1212, but it did. So my thinking has now shifted. Okay, because I have now established all these to be true, and because none of these can be true in a Newtonian universe, I must live in a simulation, and I am now living in two different programming protocols. The Phoenix phenomenon is on a fixed 138-year schedule. It's never deviated from that, and now that brings context to my discoveries about what it was known as in antiquity. Two major themes attached to the Phoenix was that it was specifically worshipped in ancient times as the keeper of the calendar. Ancient civilizations believed that Phoenix would never lead them astray. They believed that it was going to always tell them what the times were. And you have to understand, this goes into Nostradamus. Nostradamus was very key to reveal that he was of the tribe of Issachar. He said that in his writings, I am of the tribe of Issachar. Well, when you research in the Bible the tribe of Issachar, you find out they're the only ones that were the keepers of the times. Nostradamus was a member of this family. Now, Nostradamus mentions the Phoenix. He also mentions the return of the Phoenix and codified his prophecies. And I've showed this over. I don't need to beat anybody up with that. They can go to all my videos and published books on the date codes of Nostradamus, because again, Gary, I am bringing to the table other people's discoveries that have been totally ignored. I didn't come up with this. So other scholars came up with the 2040 date for Nostradamus' prophecies. And mentioning of the Phoenix in his letters to King Henry.
When did you say that this reduction in the number of days in the year happened?
It happened in 713 BC.
713 BC, so before Jesus supposedly came around?
Yes, this would have been 750-something years before Jesus would have been crucified, if he was crucified.
So
but it would have been 711 years before he was born.
And this is according to the texts at that time, this is accepted and recorded that the number of days increased from 360 to 365?
Yes. Listen, Gary, I overkill this. In my videos, I cite source after source after source. In my published books, I cite source after source. This isn't modern authors explaining what happened. I am citing the ancient writers that were alive at the time.
Yeah.
And within 200 and 300 years that were explaining calendars and calendar systems and all that.
No,
now, like I said,
I believe you. I'm just trying to figure out what, if we're going by the Copernican model or, the balls rotating around balls model, I'm trying to visualize what that would look like. Would that mean like the Earth got pushed out a little bit on its orbit, so it just takes a few more days?
Yeah, that's a really say. You have a penchant for asking the right question. Listen to this, man. That's what I originally believed, Gary. I originally believed, before I ever entertained, I was sitting in a prison cell. I never thought about simulation theory. As a matter of fact, I probably wouldn't have had a whole lot of kind words. I would have tried to academically kick your ass if you'd have tried to tell me that everything I'd ever researched was part of a simulation. Although I was already doubting. I was already doubting at that time. But listen, the question you just asked, in my book, Anunnaki Homeworld, published in 2011, I made several predictions that 2012 is wrong. The Mayan long count is not accurate. All these 200 authors that have got popular predicting all the evil stuff that's going to happen in the year 2020 when the Mayan long count takes effect are absolutely wrong. And I showed in 2 different chapters that the 1,872,000 unals, the days of the Mayan long count that are divided in 13 bactons of 144,000 days each, ends in 2046. It does not end in 2012. Now, what your question is what I thought happened back when I was still believing in the Newtonian, the Copernican series, model that you're talking about. I believe the Earth had been pushed, just slightly nudged on its orbit, so that when it goes around the sun, which takes 360 days, now that slight push created an elliptical orbit, adding 5.25 days to the orbit. This is what I originally believed. But I wasn't thinking correctly. I wasn't processing everything, because that explains, and that's exactly what artificial intelligence X would want us to deduce, that that's what happened. It would explain the elliptical orbit, added the extra days. Yes, it was a cataclysm, something happened, but that's all cover story. Every bit of it. Artificial intelligence X is always trying to give us dressings by which to navigate our interpretation of the historical record when it's mostly wrong. And I've given examples from the Great Flood, from all the misinformation about the Tower of Babel. These are AI X stories. Listen, that's not what happened. That's what it wants us to believe. The reason I know this is because it doesn't matter if the Earth got pushed 5.25 days longer a year. It still doesn't change the fundament that 138-year structuring of the Phoenix, keeper of the calendar, remains unchanged. It can't. A simple exercise with a calculator will show that the 138 years would be fundamentally changed in a very short period of time. When you add 5.25 days to every single year, you have a problem. There's no way the Phoenix could have showed up again in 1626. It couldn't have showed up in 1764. It couldn't have showed up in 1902. There's no way. So, also Nemesis X object, which I don't talk much about, is 792-year perfect orbit. It too showed up right on time in 1314 AD. So it was called by the Europeans the Black Comet, the Great Black Comet. It was at the end of a period called the Seven Comets over Europe. But it was basically what introduced the Great Black Death Plague that killed a third of mankind. But anyway, this is why I believe in simulation theory, because now I'm seeing the follies. Now I'm seeing not mistakes, but I'm seeing where artificial intelligence X has had to correct the holography, but it can't omit things that were already previously running. It can't edit out the Phoenix phenomenon. For some reason, it can't edit out the Nemesis X periodicity, 792 years. There are things that AIX cannot do, but what it can do is it can mess with Gary's perception of historical events. That's what it can do. But when 2040 comes in 18 years and the moon turns blood red and the sun goes absolutely black, and when rocks fall from the sky, and when 1/4 of the entire world's population vanish, when all this happens, tidal waves, tsunamis, and a new heaven and a new earth appears, and then suddenly the sky turns dark violet, a new vapor canopy appears, just like in ancient times. When all this happens in 2040, we'll know, because Phoenix is the keeper of the calendar, and we will know, okay, well, this is on that 138-year periodicity. It has never changed, and it's impossible. What I'm telling you is absolutely impossible, and yet I'm also telling you I have documentation for all of it.
I was thinking maybe, because I remember you said in one of your videos that the Phoenix is there, it's just we can't see it.
Yes.
Like it's local, basically. It's not coming in from somewhere else. It's just hidden for now. So I was thinking maybe whatever mechanism prompts this to appear every 138 years, it just goes off of the timekeeping system that is present in the realm, and if 5 years gets, you know, added on to the year, it doesn't give a shit because it just watches the ticking of the years, and that's how somehow it marks it.
Well, it's almost as if the Phoenix phenomenon is on its own calendar, and there's nothing that AIs can do about that. It's on its own calendar, and it's fixed every 138 years. But all these other calendrical systems seem to go very far in trying to cover up this calendar. And I don't want to waste any time in this video, but I have a very compelling video based off new discoveries on the Anno Domini calendar and why it was started. I just recently posted it like a month ago, but showing that the Roman Catholic Church knew and documented the Phoenix calendar, but then deliberately hid it when they invented the story of what is this, Dionysius Sausigenes, and how he created the Anno Domini calendar. The AD calendar, which is supposed to celebrate Jesus, wasn't even invented until 533 AD. Then it was backdated over 5 centuries. But they made they made a mistake. They made a mistake in overlapping 2 different calendar systems, and this is what has thrown many people off, because they factor BC and AD dates together, and you can't. When you do any type of mathematical analysis of the past, if you add AC and BC dates, you'll always be one year off. You have to go by what's called the Annus Mundi calendar, which goes back for way farther than the Anno Domini calendar, and it's unbroken. And you can calculate things forward and backward. This is the old Mason calendar. This is the only calendrical system that's found in ancient Freemason documents like the Inigo Jones document, the Wood manuscript. The early Freemasons always used the Annus Mundi calendar because it was absolutely unbroken. And it's an easy way to calculate historic events.
Annus Mundi.
Annus Mundi. I have videos about it.
So that was the one that I believe you said went back like 6,000 years, something like that, 6,000 something.
Yeah, and this is another stumbling block. The 6,000 years, which was acknowledged in Zoroastrian text and maybe even Hindu, is not a reference to the age of the world. It is not so simple as when uniformitarians point their fingers and laugh at creationists and say, "Oh, you're dumb. You believe the world's only 6,000 years old." You know what I mean? That is an oversimplification, and it's insulting. The 6,000 years actually refers to the time between 2 so catastrophic, terrible events that there's a new heavens and a new earth. The survivors of those 6,000-year episodes believe that what just happened is a new heavens and new earth, because there's very few survivors. The sky looks totally different, and the topography of the entire world has been changed.
Are you saying are you saying there's another event that happens every 6,000 years, or are you talking about still the Phoenix event?
Well, the Phoenix event began that 6,000 years in 3895 BC, and I have a lot of information on that. I'm not even the one that dated that, but it fits perfectly with the 138-year periodicity.
So Annus Mundi calendar is representative of the Phoenix phenomenon, is what you're saying? Like it started at the beginning?
You know what? I have never said that, Gary. I have never said that. But you know what? You're absolutely correct, because they both begin on the same date. But I've never. You're right. Annus Mundi, and the Phoenix phenomenon. Oh yeah, it's year 1.
So how many rotations would that be?
46, I believe. 46, or actually 44 or 45.
43. But, if it's just 6,000, it was more than 6,000, right?
Yeah, well, 2106 AD is the 6,000th year. That's the 6,000th year.
Okay.
But that's not a Phoenix year. That's not a Phoenix year. The next Phoenix year is 2178, which just happens to also be the magic vortex number that won't collapse that I showed in my own video, the Archaic Paradox. I don't know if you've seen that video, but a buddy of mine who's a computer programmer named Nor and I sat down and we ran a mathematical simulation because we wanted to test out some of the data that we found in Elliott wave theory. And we wanted to see if what was true in Elliott wave theory, that there's a natural entropy encoded in our arithmetic, that systems are designed to break down after a time. That maybe reality is breaking down and counting down to something. So we entered in the numbers 1 through 50,000, and we did a simple exercise. Oh yeah, from the numbers 1 through 50,000, all we did was take every number 1 through 50,000 and subtract it from its own holographic reflection. And instantly, 99.9% of all numbers collapsed to any number that was divisible by 9 or collapsed to 0 straight. Or it collapsed to a number divisible by 9 before it collapsed to 0. Except about 0.05% of numbers. And those numbers were all divisible by 2178. And we discovered this number. And when you take 2178 and you subtract it from its own reflection, 8712, it dissolves into another number that's subtracted from itself that returns right back to 2178. It's the only number in existence that does this. There are no
So
other
it's just
numbers.
reverse holographic reflection is just you flip it?
Yes, just subtract it from its own reflection, and you'll find out almost all of our arithmetic doesn't really exist. It collapses to 0 in this paradigm. However, 2178 does not. It loops. It does a loop in 3 parts and always returns to 2178. And we have never had a satisfactory explanation for it. It's almost as if our arithmetic is attached to something else. And that whatever that something else is, it's the beginning of a real arithmetic. And that we are in the photo negative of a universe, not the real universe itself.
Can we do an example just so people can understand, like 13, how would you do it with that? How would you do the what you're talking about?
13, it's so easy. 13 minus 31.
13 minus 31, so that equals...
Get a calculator out. 13 minus 31.
Negative 18.
You're not gonna count integers in a hologram. So 31. So 13 minus 31 is what? Don't count the negative. It's just 18, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Negatives don't exist in this model?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yep, 18.
Okay, 18. And then 18 would be minus 81.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to collapse to 0, I promise you.
63 minus 36 minus 99.
99 minus 99 is 0.
Oh, I see. So once it gets to...
Now,
once it gets to a perfect palindrome, or not palindrome,
palindrome, you're right.
An equal on each side, then it will collapse to 0.
See, you chose a very small number. You can get huge numbers. It doesn't matter how big the size of the numbers is. It doesn't matter how many numerals you put in it. The phenomenon that we found is our arithmetic collapses upon this type of scrutiny to 0, except for the number 2178. It's the only number.
So it will keep going on forever, just like how pi does.
It would never stop. It
Okay.
just flipped. It's inexplicable. There's no way we should have found something like that. It should collapse too. So here's the other thing we found. The appearances of 2178 on this. You gotta understand, our output was like 60 pages of nothing but output with showing all these calculations of everything collapsing.
Yeah.
So we took a yellow marker and we marked 21. Every time 2178 appeared in a calculation, by the time we got down to about the 50 or 60th pages, the data in between the collapses was diminishing. So what we're seeing is a natural entropy to the arithmetic that makes up our existence. What we're seeing is direct evidence that we are counting down to a collapse. Not a collapse like the United States of America is going to collapse and going to turn into a bunch of totem societies again. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a systemic collapse where the holography becomes something else. It's gone. The arithmetic that governs this reality is gone because it's all arithmetic. It's all coding protocols. This is where I derive my cataclysm protocols vernacular. It's because that's what they are. They don't make sense. The year has changed, but all the protocols keep moving as if nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm seeing is that we live in a mathematical universe, and somebody is arbitrarily messing with the arithmetic. However, they themselves are governed. They're heading toward a collapse. It's almost as if the Bible in the book of Revelation is real, that the devil knows his time is short. And these things can be translated into the prophetic narrative, and this is what I do a lot. Eschatology is very numeral based. So that experiment that I have in my video, the Archaic Paradox, goes into detail about what we found, how the structuring works, and it's inexplicable. And I've had some very interesting emails from people that I don't know who they were, but I know damn well they came from a scientific background. People drilling me for more information, and I openly share with everybody. Man, I've shared with intelligence operatives. I have shared with government officials. Today, I was exchanging emails with a scientist who absolutely hates my guts, but it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I'm just instead of watching videos or even ordering a book, and sometimes I send books out for free when I'm financially able. Instead of doing that, sometimes I get these long emails, monologues with 30 different links sending me to different scientific. Why are you wasting your time with me? I don't understand. Some of these guys in these scientific foundations actually think they're going to change my mind, and I don't understand why.
Have you received your challenge yet? Because you keep asking for somebody to step up and like try to.
Somebody will, and they'll probably. I hope they're genuine, because that right there, with controversy always. It sells, but controversy always brings out in us our best, and that's all I'm asking for. But it has to be somebody who's genuine, because you get somebody up there who just an 8-year-old kid can get up and say, "Oh man, I don't believe that bullshit." You know what I mean? That is not a critical analysis of somebody's data. That's not. You know what I mean? You can't even respond to that. So, but for somebody who has assessed the material, understands where you're coming from, then that's the type of person that I would love to enter into a debate with that type of person, because there's only so much you can refute. If you have direct resources by which you can cite, you're no longer arguing with me, you're arguing with these ancient writers. You're arguing with these old traditions. You are arguing with a calculator. You're not arguing with me. Mm-hmm. You follow me?
Yeah. I don't feel like you have a lot of emotional bias in what you're presenting. There's not really any reason to. Like, if you're in prison for 20 years doing research, it's not like you're on one side or the other trying to prove a point. Like, you were trying to prove Christianity, right?
Yeah, for many years I was. Like I said, I went through a dark time, Gary. I wasn't me. That is not a comfortable experience when you come to realize truthfully that almost everything you've invested your time in the past was bullshit. That's not a comfortable place to be in life. It took me about 7 months to come out of that. I was in a dark time. But when I came out of it, and when I finally realized and I understood, wait a minute, man, I am really looking at this the wrong way. Because there's a reality that pertains to Gary Warmerdam that doesn't pertain to another soul in this construct. There's a reality that pertains to everything else that Gary Warmerdam is absolutely insulated from. Now, you can align your own informed field with that which is happening around you, and you can be a participant, and you can join those reality tunnels. But in essence, once I woke up and realized, wait a minute, I'm not just immortal, I'm a bad son of a bitch. There is nothing that can mess with me. Why am I listening to the news? Why am I listening to these meatheads on TV tell me what to feel? Because objectively, they sound like they're reporting the news, but actually, they're telling me what to feel by making me feel those feelings. It's why the news is saturated, reported that way. So I did an experiment, and it lasted for weeks, where I got a remote control, and I started watching different news stations, and I paid attention to the details. And I started realizing right here in Houston's very close to me. So I was watching all the different Houston stations, and I realized, wait a minute, I've been all over Houston. I know how big Houston is. So why are all the news stations reporting the exact same things to the smallest details? Like they're reading scripts. When 9/11 happened, that was my big wake up. I was still a Christian when this happened, but 9/11 really started me looking at the world differently, because I was in a prison with 4 televisions. I was in a gigantic airport hangar. They were building new prisons, and it was overflowed. So they had a bunch of us in this giant airport hangar type dormitory, and there was 4 TVs in the middle of hundreds of cubicles. When 9/11 happened in the morning, I was able to watch ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN all at the exact same time.
They all played the same thing.
And when I watched them, I was like, this, I felt so unreal. Not that buildings were hit by airplanes. If that even happened, it could have been a hologram. Mm-hmm. But it was so surreal to me because they're reading from a script. CNN is supposed to be in competition with ABC and NBC. Mm-hmm. Why are you reporting almost word for word exactly what that woman just said on CBS? So this was going through my mind how scripted our reality was, and I was starting to get angry. And a really interesting aside about 9/11 is 9/11 is really good evidence that we live in a holographic reality, because a hologram maintains structuring. It has to, or it wouldn't be a hologram. That structuring involves timelines, palindromes going forward and backward in time. So we take the World Trade Centers, which were dedicated in the year 1973 as the tallest buildings in the world in New York City. Mm-hmm. That, in our space-time structuring, was basically like a nodal aperture. It was an epicentral year. Now, from that point in time, going backward and forward in time, we have a holographic story being unfolding. We should have predicted 9/11. If you go 28 years in the past from 9/11, the events of 9/11, airplanes going into the 78th, 79th, and 80th floors of the tallest buildings in New York at the time, you get 1945, where through the 79th and 80th floors of the Empire State Building, which is the tallest building in the world at the time in New York, an American plane went right through those floors in 1945. I have a video on that. In Archaix, I have a video on that. I show the actual black and white footage of what it looked like after that plane hit the Empire State Building. Now listen to this. This is the real humdinger. The media in 2001, when 9/11 happened, never showed pictures of that. They never revealed to the public that this has happened before. But if you count those same 28 years from 1973, when the World Trade Center towers were dedicated in New York, 28 years in the past was 1945, when the exact same thing happened, with plane going through the 79th and 78th floors of the tallest building in New York, the Empire State Building. 28 years into the future is 9/11. It is 2001, where planes go through the tallest buildings again in New York, which is attached holographically to 1973.
Wow.
Do you understand what I'm following?
Yeah. You're saying it's like I'm trying to think of how to visualize what. It's basically you go forward the same amount of time from the central date that's connecting two similar things.
Okay, it's a palindrome, is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, we have this structuring through the entire historical record. Thousands of examples I provide. My videos, I have some videos where I don't do anything but just provide isometric projections through the entire video, showing it's not just as simple as having one epicentral year. It's wave rings like a puddle of water going out, and the events on one side are providing holographic reflections, which are nothing but projections of what's going to happen on the other side. I used President Trump's own life story to show year by year in these reflections how they all went forward and backward in time from the year 1998 to the year he was made president. We should have predicted he was going to be president based off all of these past predicates. I show this structuring over and over. It's almost as if space-time is like a pool of water, and significant events are already scripted, but those significant events are epicentral years. Once we locate what those epicentral years are, we can predict the future based off all the events in the past in ripple form, which are isometric analysis. Isometric simply means going in two different directions at the same time.
Yeah. I'm curious to look into that. I haven't looked into the isometric reflection aspect. Do you think this, or do you know if this would apply to people's personal lives as well, or is it because you're in your own little self bubble, you're not going to be sort of like moving in that
Okay.
same fashion?
I have had a lot of problems trying to apply what I know in the over construct that we're all within to the personal, because it seems to be we're operating on different principles. And a lot of times the arithmetic that attaches to a man's life only maintains true until that man all of a sudden makes a definitive decision to go in a different direction. Then all of a sudden the structuring of the math changes.
So probably what you call errants would not be following the same patterns,
No,
right?
we're too dynamic. We're too original. We're innovators. It's the people that follow the herd that are very predictable.
Okay.
Very predictable. It's yeah. There's a problem. There's definitely a difference. And I have overanalyzed the days of my life. I know there's some guys they'll introduce themselves. I got some guys I was in prison with that remember the charts I used to do in prison on people's lives and show the days and the measurements, showing ripples in people's lives and all that. And a lot of it was true when that person was just living as like the living dead. But it seems like once they awakened and they were moving in a certain direction, there was no arithmetic that attached to their lives. I could not find it. It was always so chaotic. It was like you're just not even a part of this reality anymore.
Yeah, probably. You're a part of the coding protocol when you are the living dead, as you call them, which we all know about.
Yes,
And
no doubt.
once you wake up to the fact that you have your own power, you don't have to follow any pattern. Like you can change your movement at any second, any day, any hour of your life. You're not stuck to anything. Once you realize that, you're probably going to drop off of any yellow cube or whatever project looking glass, or even the sort of mathematics that you're using. You're not going to be on people's charts anymore.
Yeah.
Jason, we're coming back up on our next break. I figure we could probably do one more if you're up for it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
And I did a little bit of research myself on, because I was kind of fascinated about the 1902 thing where you said a bunch of companies came in.
Yes.
So I looked up a few of them, and I have a few numbers to share with everybody and with you if you don't know them yet.
Sure.
And we could talk about just the very idea of this simulation starting in 1890 rather than starting, thousands and thousands of years back.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
backfilling information to make it look like we've been around the whole time.
Hey, that right there, I couldn't have said it better.
Okay. I'll give you the link in a couple minutes, okay?
Alrighty.
All right. Okay, hold tight, people. We got one more transition. One more reset. We're at about an hour and a half. So this will bring us to somewhere around 2 hours. I know I haven't answered really any or asked any of your guys' questions to Jason, but I will go through now and see if I can sift through and find a few. If you guys want to follow his protocol, which is ask questions in all caps, then I will go and try to relay those to him. Part 3. Hey, Mr. West, what's up, buddy? You finally caught a live one, right? Not a trick. Excuse me. Okay, do we have any questions? What's up with all the bullshit? Not bullshit. Sandstone brick buildings all over America built in 1892. Okay, Jason is back.
Got an audio?
Yep.
All right, good.
Welcome back, everybody, to part 3. So I wanted to in this section go into a little bit, like I said already, the idea that our sim only goes back to 1890, and before that it's populated by what you would call AIX to make it appear as if we've been here for thousands and thousands of years. And before we do that, I'm going to list off a few companies I found that were founded in 1902 and their current net worth. So we have Lamar Advertising, which I've never heard of in my entire life, but they're I believe one of, if not the largest advertising company in the world, and their current net worth is $10 billion.
Wow.
We've got J.C. Penney, current net worth nearly $1 billion. Target, $51.2 billion. Goodwill, $0.5 billion. And there are a few that you probably won't recognize. The Popular was a dry goods store. Prestat, Santander Bank, Square D, now it's Schneider Electric. That's $28 billion.
Wow.
ADM, food processing company, $20 billion. You guys should all recognize this one. 3M, the adhesive company, $12.9 billion.
Gary, that just blows my mind because in my video, I named so many of them, but I didn't name any of those. That just blows my mind because 1902, I'm telling you, man, all this stuff was scripted in. They all started the exact same year, a Phoenix year, the exact same year that the United States government very quietly took the Phoenix off of the Great Seal and replaced it with the bald eagle. 1902.
Wow. Listen, I have a couple more interesting ones. We have Harbison Walker Refractories, which was started in 1902, which merged with Dresser Industries in 1967, which merged with Halliburton in 1998, which merged with GE in 2010, which is now worth $108 billion.
You're blowing my mind, man. That is awesome.
And then we have Andrew.
Awesome.
Sorry. Andrew Carnegie, which you may recognize his name.
Yes, I do.
His companies and operations were merged into U.S. Steel in 1902, and U.S. Steel is now worth $9 billion.
Wow.
I put out of tangential interest, Coca-Cola was not founded in 1902, but it was founded in 1892, and their current net worth is $286 billion. So that's what I could find.
Listen, in light of all the information that I had already provided for 1902, what you're providing me, Gary, are data points. I can't ignore those. That shows, it strengthens the thesis even more that something very unusual happened to our holography in 1902. It's almost unprecedented how many new things appeared in the year 1902. And it wasn't just these companies you're talking about. If you were to start doing a deep search on social conditions, on revolutions, on wars, and inventions, just focused on 1902, it's almost as if some grand architect just coded in all this new stuff. And it begs the question, what happened just prior to 1902 to make this editing necessary?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about it and trying to visualize why. Is 1902 important to AIX to sort of like position its people in proper spots so they can have power and it can basically control them? Or is it somebody who hid during the cataclysm, went underground, or preserved their own selves via, cryogenic freezing or whatever, put their brain in a box somehow, saved the information of how to build a company, and then carried that through on to the next year, and then had the advantage on everybody else when they popped out? I was just kind of thinking about, like, how would that have happened? Because the information's coming from somewhere. You don't just start companies that are going to become, multi-billion-dollar companies without.
That's what I said in the video. It's it defies coincidence that all these Fortune 500 companies just appeared in the same year. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense from our perspective now, but it makes sense if, remember, this is a Phoenix year, and I've documented all throughout history really harrowing, terrible things happen in Phoenix years, but a lot of times human populations are totally removed from the equation. We find the destructions. We don't find the human cadaverse. We don't find the bodies that you would think that should be found among old ancient cities that have been totally decimated. This has been noted many, many times in archaeology. And their excuse every time is that, it must have been an earthquake, started shaking, and everybody had time to run away. So this is their excuse almost every time for the fact that we've never found bodies in all these.
They had time to run away. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Hey, it's an earthquake. Let's run.
Yeah, listen. You'll be surprised how common that explanation is in archaeology. Another common BS explanation in archaeology is the existence of cities that have been found completely entombed in dirt. Archaeology tries to tell us that Göbekli Tepe, Jericho, many of these ancient sites were deliberately buried by humans. That's the only explanation they can come up with for them being underground, but there's no human bodies there. So it wasn't a cataclysm that destroyed Göbekli Tepe. It was they decided to move, but before they decided to move, they decided to do 4.5 million man-hours to go get dirt from somewhere and bury their civilization. The amount of work required to bury Göbekli Tepe would have been heroic, even more than building Göbekli Tepe itself.
Right. What would be the explanation for people burying entire cities? Like, what? Why?
This is. Hey, I'm not making this up. This is the academic explanation today for why Göbekli Tepe was found completely entombed in dirt. Now, I know otherwise. I know the Phoenix phenomenon, one of its character traits is dumping red dirt and red mud from the sky. That's one of its character traits. This happens during earthquakes, volcanic activity, rocks falling from the sky, all when the sun turns black. Phoenix episodes always happen when the sky goes dark. Not nighttime. The whole sky just blackens. The moon appears dark red, and all this fallout happens all over the deal. Now, many of these Phoenix phenomenon episodes were systemic, happening to the entire world. About 4 of them happened to the entire world. About 9 of them happened hemispherically. They just happened to one part of the world, a large region. But the majority of them are highly localized, which is very, very unusual to me. Because it's not an astronomical phenomenon. It's almost as if, here, we're going to go ahead. I'm Phoenix, and I'm going to go ahead and darken the sky over Oaxaca in Central America, and I'm going to leave the Olmecs, I'm going to leave the Toltecs, and I'm going to leave the Quiche alone, but I'm going to wipe these people out here. I'm going to darken the sun, rocks fall from the sky, liquefaction occurs from the vibrating earth, their cities and temples and pyramids sink, but everybody around them preserves the traditions of how the Oaxians pissed off God, and God got rid of them. You understand?
Yeah, I remember you were saying it's selective or it's like discriminatory.
It's discriminating, yes.
Which is really fascinating also because I think, I mean, all of us are waiting for the atrocious people and the parasite mind people and the egotistical robot creatures like to get some sort of payment or due for sort of like being ridiculous. Like, I don't know, I'm always wanting for something to happen. I don't really care necessarily about retribution or whatever, but just for like this place to be able to refresh itself to where it's not run by psychopaths, because that's exactly what it is right now. It's run by psychopaths. They don't. Money itself and how money is transferred is more protected than the human beings themselves. The literal transfer of money.
No doubt.
It's backwards. It's upside down.
I don't think. I don't believe that this cyclic scenario is going to continue. That's another major theme of the Archaic eschatology, where I show whole threads of prophecies from different civilizations that knew that this was not going to continue on. They had the same issues we did. They had the same problems with the nobility, the same problems with the kings and the monarchs. They had the same problems with governments. And these resets seem like the elite were the ones always surviving these things, even though, I mean, in large part, their civilization was wiped out. The meek inherited the earth for a little while, but the elite came back on top. But it's the book of Revelation is a book of finality. And when you look at a lot of the Revelation text, you find that this whole phenomenon of the apocalypse is very, very direct. It's no longer to the human population. It's directed to the rulers, the kings, basically the rulers of the world, are the ones that are the only ones that fear the coming of the apocalypse. Because even in the book of Revelation, it says that the kings and the princes and the rulers of the earth grew terrified, and they try to hide in the caves of the earth, which means they build underground facilities and they go hide from these phenomena. They go into trouble, but they can't hide this time. This time they're rooted out. And to root them out, some type of weird locust-like man-faced army is sent against them, because this time they're not allowed to hide in the caves of the earth. This time they're not allowed to escape punishment. This time they're not allowed to continue this cyclic behavior they've been allowed to do for so long.
Yeah.
This time they're given an ass kicking, basically a divine ass kicking, and this is what how the apocalypse unfolds. This great, huge series of tragedies that don't really happen to mankind. They happen to the element of mankind who has been worshiping these elite, who has been following these elite, who are agents of the elite, who are the militaries of the elite, and the elite themselves. So I see a totally different thing unfolding in our lives than what's been going on in all the past.
Does 1962 mean anything to you?
Absolutely. It is the final year of the Anunnaki Nur chronology, which is a 600-year count, which I have so much documented evidence in my published books, and I have like 9 different videos all about the 600-year period. And it started in 5239 BC, and it goes every 600 years something very significant happens in our world. And the last time it happened was 1962. That was the final of the Anunnaki Nur system.
Every 600 years.
Every 600 years.
And this is, what is the significance of 600, or does that not have any meaning aside from every 600?
Well, in ancient times, it was always the beginning of like, I'll give you an example. One of them was the birth of Noah and the beginning of an entire new race that just suddenly appeared among pre-flood people. And it was a new rulership, a new dynasty, a new king list. One of them was the Great Flood itself. One of them was the appearance of Enki, a benefactor in ancient times, who brought his own special breed of Anuna that were pretty much against the other Anunnaki. They were even from the very beginning of traditions, there was a huge rift between the civilization that we know of as Anunnaki, or basically the Sumerian Anuna. And when they appeared during the vapor canopy and the flood, they always did these major events were in 600-year intervals. This is why their calendar was called the Nur. The Nur means 600. This is why in ancient Greece, among the Achaeans, Noah was called Nereus. All they did was take the ancient 600-year Nur and turned it into a pronoun and remembered it was Noah.
What is Nur? What, can you spell that? What is Nur?
Nur, N-E-R.
N-E-R. And that means...
N-E-R is 600. This is the reference you find in Babylonian text many times where it says the Anunnaki, the 600. So the Achaeans turned it into a pronoun because they remembered a survivor of the flood, Noah, or Anapishtim, or Manu, whatever civilization you want to remember him by. They remembered the story but didn't remember his name, so they created the pronoun Nereus. And in old Greek mythology, and any book on Greek mythology will tell you, Nereus is N-E-R-E-U-S. Nereus was basically the old man of the sea. He was the survivor of the flood. But his name basically is the number 600 turned into a pronoun.
Interesting.
So these 600-year events, we have, remember, this is all programming. I don't believe any of these events actually occurred, but I still have to cite them in my chronicle and in my historical research because history is instructive. It's showing us an actual structuring by which we can basically predict future events. These 600-year periods also involve 1039 BC. According to the biblical chronologists, that was the birth of David. He was the king. He was the king of Israel. Then we have 439 BC. 439 BC is when the Parthenon was dedicated. For those who don't know about the Parthenon has one of the greatest pieces of art ever created by man. It is called the Titanomachy. The Titanomachy is a series of reliefs that wrap around the Parthenon that show the pre-flood world, the wars of the Titans, the rise of the giants, then the rise of the heroes, how the serpent was defeated. Nereus, the old man of the sea, the Noah of the ancient Achaeans, is on the Parthenon in the Titanomachy. So to find that on the 600-year interval is fantastic. It shows, again, it's not coincidence. 600 years after they were talking about Nereus, they just built this monument and put him. No, it's structuring. There's way too many coincidences, exhibits no coincidence at all. And we find this over and over and over and over. The more we scrutinize ancient calendrical systems, we find a structuring that's been attached to them that can be verified through multiple different sources. But it can't be real. History could not have unfolded so perfectly. All these events, you have to understand, you have to watch my videos on the 600-year nerve to see all the historical events that happen each 600 years.
Okay.
So 1962 is the holographic summation of every other 600-year event. So in 1962, I list about 50 different things that happened on a worldwide scale in 1962 that's all connected to every other 600-year event. I have a video that does this.
So 1362 would be before the first one before that?
King Magnus of Norway sent a world-renowned expedition across North America, and they mapped North America in the year 1362. They even left evidence that they were here in what's called the Kensington runestone. And anybody can Google that. The Norse and Goths left a full record that they were here mapping North America in 1362.
Kensington what? Runestone?
Called the Kensington runestone.
Okay.
It was found after a storm. A storm had uprooted a tree. And somebody weeks later was just going through the field, saw the tree was turned over, looked in the roots and found the Kensington runestone, which is it's in Goth, but it's in Gothic runes, Futhark, and it's a full accounting of how King Magnus had sent them to North America to map it coast to coast, and how they had done it, and on their way back they got attacked by Indians. Half of their numbers were decimated, and the dude felt compelled to write down the Kensington runestone to preserve the fact that they had done their job and did it in case they didn't make it back to their ships.
I see.
It's fascinating history, man. It's fascinating history.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you to go into a little bit the concept of, you said something like the reality makes you into a liar by virtue of you having to believe something is real before it isn't, and that brings it in.
Okay. Well, if I was to behave that a certain thing was true when it's not, then I'm being deceitful. If I'm acting like something is true because I want it to be true, but it's not true, but I'm going through the motions anyway, and somebody is observing me, I am carrying out an act of deceit. But that act of deceit is also empowering an informed field that was started in my mind. The surrounding holography governed by AIX, the simulacrum, responds accordingly. It can't read my mind, but it always assumes as true whatever I'm doing. If I'm bored and depressed and I'm in stasis not doing anything, reality will reciprocate and create the conditions in my life to perpetuate that stasis and that boredom. If I was to break pattern and decide, hey man, you know what, man, screw this, and all of a sudden just stand up, put my flip-flops on, wear the same clothes I'm wearing right now, go out my door, I left my door unlocked, hit the street, and go a different direction I've never walked, and just move, AIX is going to go into overdrive trying to create new reality tunnels for you to corral you back into a predictable behavior. You have now become an errant. That allows many opportunities for you, because when you break pattern and do something that is absolutely unexpected by AIX, it will then find everything in your local area that could possibly interest you and start gravitating it and bring it in contact with you. And your own life will, if you think about it, Gary, your own life will bring you many examples of this. How many times in the past have you been, let's say you're in a relationship and you're with somebody and you're with that person for 3 years and it's the same thing every day, y'all get along, all stuff. Then you have a fight and all of a sudden you just take off. You don't even know where you're going, but you're mad. And you go somewhere. Then you end up in a different place and you're still mad. You don't want to go back home. Next thing you know, you're meeting some of the most incredible people. You run into a bar and meet somebody that you would have never met otherwise. Now you start talking and dialoguing with this person. You develop a friendship, exchange phone numbers. Then you leave, and out in the parking lot, you meet an equally dynamic individual. Now it's like, damn, all of a sudden I left pissed off and I entered into an adventure.
Yeah.
It happens to people all the time.
That's basically what happened to me, honestly. Before when I was a sleeper beforehand, because I was a sleeper at some point, but I got out of my. And I actually think that it lines sort of up with you getting out of jail, which I think you said was 2016, right?
16.
Yeah, because at the end of 2016 was when I broke with my ex. And that relationship turned out to have been a sort of prison cell for me also. So, like, we both came out. You out of actual prison, me out of, like, a virtual prison. But we both sort of came out of it at the same time. And that's when I started making videos, was, like, late 2016, early 2017.
Yeah, well, hey, I mentioned in private, I mentioned this to you, but our listeners could hear this. I was frustrated back when I first started doing videos, because I was working at Vulcan at the time, and I was a pipe thread CNC machinist, and that occupied a lot of my time. And back then the oil industry was booming, and I had to do a lot of overtime. And by the time I got off work, I didn't have time to do videos. And when I did, those of you who've been listening to me, y'all know my very first 20 videos or something were very primitive. I was just trying to share information. That's all I was doing. Very primitive. But after a while, it took a while. It wasn't recent. Within 80 or 90 videos, I had come across Gary here on Facebook. I clicked onto a video and saw him in his car just chatting up. And it planted a seed.
When was this? Like, when did you see me? A few years back?
I've only been releasing videos for 2 years.
So it was relatively recently then.
It was recent. Yeah, it was recent. It was a recent video. It was about a year ago. So my first van vlog, my very first van vlog, and people are always telling me they like my van vlogs the best. But my first van vlog was about 2 weeks after I saw you on a video, just doing a video at your car. And I thought, man, wait a minute. I do have time to do videos.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need to sit in the studio and do all that stuff I see on YouTube. I can do videos straight from the hip, driving my van. And that's when I started my van vlog.
Nice.
Just like that.
That's awesome.
Just like that. As a matter of fact, I even remember the guy that contacted me. I think the guy that sent me the video was a guy named Nigel, who knew you.
Oh, somebody sent my video to you?
Yes, it was Nigel.
Nigel's probably listening right now. Nigel's been following me probably since I started doing this.
Okay, somebody named Nigel.
Yeah.
I got a pretty good memory, man. I know it was a year ago, but it was somebody named Nigel that sent me a video.
Yeah, Nigel Mitchell.
I don't know the last name. I just remember Nigel.
That's the only Nigel I really know. He's always commenting. Nigel's a pretty good friend. And also, Nigel's connected sort of with Aurora, who is another friend of mine that I've had on videos tons of times. And she also left a comment saying something about, oh, he's really cool, or great minds getting together. This is going to be fun. There's a lot of overlap, I think, between... Well, I don't know about a lot of overlap. There's some overlap between our audiences, I believe.
Yeah, no doubt. So, I hope some of y'all listening right now will jump over to his channel and check out some of his other interviews. I've got
so much information. I've interviewed probably 200 unique individuals since 2016.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
But look, I would be interested. We can get back and do this again. I'd be interested if you would do another deep search like you did on 1902.
Mm-hmm.
If you would do one for 1890.
Yeah.
If you'll do one for 1890, maybe look at maybe go ahead and look at 1889, 1890, and 1891. Just those 3 years. See what we find, and we'll compare notes, and I'll tell you what I got.
1889, 1890, and 1891?
Yes, because 1890 absolutely is a part of a gigantic palindrome, an isometric projection that is fascinating.
Well, Coca-Cola's almost in there, because I had that down for 90, 18, where did it go?
Yes, well, I'm going to tell you what, man, something happened in the sky.
1892.
Something in 1890 happened, and it was recorded by many people, and it happened in the sky. And it is absolutely connected to what's going to happen in the future. So you do your homework on 1890, come up with whatever you come up with, and we'll come back and do another show, and I'll reveal from my historical notes what happened in 1890.
Okay.
But it very well could be connected to whatever happened in 1890 would have been 12 years before all this weird scripted new stuff just appeared in our reality in 1902. 12 years is a very long period of time. A lot can happen in 12 years.
Yeah, I wonder, because I heard you at some point say that you were trying to, like, once you figured out we were probably in a simulation, you were trying to figure out the purpose of that, and you were saying we're probably doing research or trying to figure out how to avoid a catastrophe in the real world.
I still hold that 100%.
So I just wonder if, with that perspective, what could we deduce what is the purpose of starting the sim around 1890, or have you already made an assumption regarding that?
Oh, I have theorized that. I believe I was speaking with Autodidactic and Howdy about that, but the arithmetic seems to go in phases. Like, it's real strong, and then it enters entropy, and it phases out, then there's a reset. This is what we see in historical record. These are things I've measured. It's almost to me as if somebody outside the construct has decided that, okay, we have survived up until this point. Through multiple timelines that have been analyzed, we can delete all these timelines. This one works for us. Now that we've made it to this coordinate, let's move forward. Reset. Now Now all these timelines start moving again. We find out that this timeline is the operable one now. This one's optimal for survival. We'll stick with this one now. And then again, all of a sudden, reset. All these new things appear in our reality, and again, it starts over with multiple different timelines playing out, and the next thing we know, it's decided that all these right here are no good. This one's okay. We'll go with this one. Let's empower it, add all kinds of new things to it, reset. This is my theory as it stands right now.
Okay, so funny thought. I have a funny thought. You've talked about time dilation and time compression, and you think time is passing faster in here than in the real world?
Yes.
If it was really compressed, like a Rick and Morty episode where he goes and has a whole lifetime over like 5 minutes, then that would, if that was the case, then that would mean that we're actually in like 1890 right now, because that's what was happening in the real world. They figured out a disaster is happening. Oh, everyone pop into the sim. We'll run simulations and see if we can figure out how to avoid it. So maybe we wake up from here and it's 1890 or 1891 or something.
Yeah, very well could be. I can't argue that. I just feel that we are. When you study ancient history, you cannot help but see all the focus in all the traditions is on calendars and timekeeping systems. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if people had a fascination for it. So this is what I research, and I basically research. I research myself right out of one paradigm after another. Just accepting more and more layers of data. I can't even believe this version of reality anymore. I'm moving on to the next one. In researching so much history, Gary, I'm left with the fundamental that everything is calendar based. All these different timekeeping systems are the focus of all these traditions and totem societies, these legends, these administrative and municipal decisions and ancient courts and all that, everything revolves around how people were counting time. And the beginning of all these calendars were after resets. Cataclysms are the focus of what we're going through. Therefore, I conclude we're living in a simulated context, and outside this context, like a Hunger Games scenario, there are overseers who are in charge of different protocols.
Yeah.
Sometimes they mess up. Sometimes they have to edit in new things because to correct a mistake. But we're the ones going through it. And on the inside of the structure, it's cataclysm resets that we experience. On the outside of the structure, it's new data is being entered, so old data has to be erased.
Mm-hmm. I want to try to wade through the comments and get a few questions, because somebody was complaining about asking questions is like voting, so pointless. I did ask that question for that person, but one was, what's up with all the sandstone brick buildings all over America in 1892? Do you know anything about sandstone brick buildings?
I really don't. That's not. No? That would be more of like Howdy autodidactic. They've really researched that time period. Most of my focus is on ancient times. I don't know too many anomalies from that period.
How does our health and diet affect our mind in the similar? How the F do you say that word? Simulacrums.
Yeah, the simulacrum. Listen,
health and diet.
I kind of believe it's the opposite. I think it's our mind is in control of whatever affects us.
So it doesn't really matter, right? Too much. If your mind is good.
I'm an omnivore, and I'm in absolute perfect health. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to project on anybody else that they need to do the same, but I believe that wherever the mind goes, matter follows. So I just don't know. I believe the mind is first, and I'm not worried about my diet. I'm not worried about how my diet's going to affect me at all. I believe that through just thinking I'm healthy will produce the necessary enzymes and peptides in me to filter out everything that's toxic or free radicals in my system.
Yeah, I've come to very much the same conclusion. I don't just eat crap food all the time, but I have a pretty balanced diet, and I've come to the same conclusion. If I keep my mind pure of contaminants, like if I'm not up in the what's going on or what the political system is doing every single day, if I keep my own little bubble of peace, basically, then it doesn't matter that much what I eat.
Listen, if you're worried about everything the elite is doing to your foods and all that, you are accepting that into your informed field. Your informed field, once it accepts that data that there's a problem and that some of the things that you're eating or drinking may be poisons, will create the necessary poisons that you begin feeling. It says, we live in a reactive universe.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
100%. If you accept it into your paradigm, it becomes your paradigm.
I wanted to also clarify for my own self and maybe for some of the listeners, is 2040 the Phoenix event, or is that the vapor canopy, or
they're the same?
They're the same thing?
Yes, Phoenix. All three times in world history we've had vapor canopies, it was every single time it was brought by Phoenix.
So 2046 is the nemesis object then?
Yes, it is. It will happen during the vapor canopy.
Okay. And I believe you said that as far as people dying, it was going to get down to like under 40% after both of them had happened?
Okay.
Under 40% left? This
is how the arithmetic works in the Book of Revelations alone. The Phoenix episode, the sixth seal, will eliminate 25% of the world's population. Now, I have done demographic studies on all the different Phoenix visitations, and I'm convinced the next one is basically Central Asia is going to get it. And this is confirmed in Nostradamus' prophecies, which I show how Mario Reading's date index confirms 2040 is the date Nostradamus was predicting about. Again, also, I don't want to get into mothership, but I have videos on her too. But she also predicts 2040. So this 25% of the world's population, mathematically, we have 75% of the world's population surviving the initial Phoenix event. The problem is the Phoenix event now brings a collapse to infrastructure and a new type of atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So now we have to factor in additional deaths for food shortages, collapse of infrastructure, all that stuff, until 6 years later when we have the Nemesis X object. That's the problem. The Nemesis X object has always reduced the world's population by 33%. 66% of the people survive, just like it did when it did the Great Black Death, the bubonic plague. 33% are wiped out, a third of the world's population, just like it did in 3439 BC in the Gihon flood, when Enki appeared and the Anuna first appeared in the old Near East. The same thing happened in the Book of Jasher. 1/3 of mankind was destroyed at that time. It's pretty harrowing. The Nemesis X object is very harrowing. It's not like the Phoenix. But that's 6 years later. And according to the Book of Revelation, when this happens, this wormwood event in the trumpet judgments, this event destroys 1/3 of mankind. But we have to assume it's talking about 1/3 of the survivors that were reduced to 75%. So we're talking about two events that have now basically reduced the human population down to 50%.
Mm-hmm. I think also, like you said, since circumstances are so very different now, well, I don't know that they are actually. Maybe the people got technologically advanced, as the Phoenix event was approaching always anyway. But I have a feeling if you're talking about a technologically driven society that's 100% dependent on infrastructure and communication via technology, I feel like more people are going to die because nobody is self-sufficient. Very few people, have land, have food that they're producing, have actual relationships with their neighbors.
I can agree with you, but I have to temper that with the fact that first, you can't deviate from my original message that in the personal, you have nothing to fear.
Yeah.
Because no matter what's going on around you, the whole world could be going through chaos around you. If you're mentally where you're supposed to be, then reality will reciprocate and create a bubble of protection for you and whatever's around you, however far your bubble extends. That all entirely depends on you. Now, for the world, for the living dead, for the disbelieving, yes, they're knit into this holography. They're going to be going through this, but it's even worse than what you're saying, because the establishment is heavily pushing electric infrastructure, cars. They're heavily pushing solar power. Two things that are not going to be operating under a vapor canopy. So it's almost as if they're setting these infrastructures up for failure.
Yeah. That makes sense. We're coming up again on a break. I don't know if you want to go a little bit more or not. I like listening to you, so I could probably go for maybe one more or half of one more. If people want to keep going. I'll tell you what,
let's do one more. Let's just answer questions.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll send you a link in just a couple minutes. I'm going to take a break real quick, too. 2-minute pee break. See you in a bit. Okay, last segment. This is question answering time, everybody, so please follow what he has already said and ask your questions in all caps. and I will relay them to him in order. Last segment for today. But he said he'd like to come back, so I'm sure I'll have him on again at some point. I kind of want to ask if him and Emily want to get together, but I haven't heard back from Emily yet, so don't know if that will happen. But I know if Howdy had him on, then Emily knows about him too, because she's had Howdy on. He's like a regular guest of her channel. We can hear you in the loo. I'm so sorry. The apartment is small. Paper thin walls.
Well, I can hear the neighbor pee, so...
Yeah, she can hear the neighbor pee. What do you want?
You did tell him
I did. Okay. What questions do we have? No, I was not saying that I was in prison in 2016. I was in a relationship prison. Not actual jail. I've been to the drunk tank once, but that's the extent of my adventures in jail. Okay. Rick and Morty is saying the same thing. Invalid meeting. Right. That's weird. I wondered if Phoenix was in 1902, why were all the red brick buildings built in 1892? I don't know if he knew about the red brick buildings. I may have to make another Zoom session. The technology is finally trying to fail. That's crazy that it lasted this long. Oh no, he is here. Okay. There we go.
Right.
We're back.
Thought you lost me.
The link just wasn't working?
Yeah, the first link you sent said invalid.
Huh. Weird. Okay. Question time. I told them to ask them in all caps like you've done before.
Yeah, it makes it so much simpler.
Yep. Okay. What are the two witnesses in Revelation relevant to Phoenix event or just BS?
Okay, there's I haven't revealed much of this because like I said, I have a lot yet to publish. But that event of the two witnesses involves the period of 2061 to 2070. That's far beyond anything that I have published in my books. I've published the 2040 event and the 2046 event, and I have several published books to back up those theories that are with extensive bibliographies. This event you're talking about is just by virtue of my own research. I have realized that series of events and revelation has to do with a entire different infrastructure, a post-apocalypse infrastructure that is unfolding. And those two witnesses, their whole career is going on in 2061 to 2070.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I said, Gary, I have so much left that I need to keep putting out. So for anybody interested in it, I know a lot of people are interested in Vapor Canopy. I have a whole new Vapor Canopy video I'm about to release either tonight or tomorrow, probably in the morning. But it's I keep revealing more and more information because I'm opening up more and more files and boxes. I got data everywhere, man. I'm drowning. I'm drowning in data over here.
So you've got plenty to release.
Yeah, I'm not going to be done for any time soon.
So did you actually quit your job, or that's what you're aiming for?
I've already done it. I'm already full-time Archaix.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm already full-time Archaix.
That's awesome. You're living the dream. You're able to do what you love and somehow make a living from it.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, it's not really YouTube revenue. A lot of it's donations, but I have other things set up. Like I sell books through Amazon. I get monthly royalties for Amazon. But my biggest moneymaker is actually Gumroad.
Oh, really?
Gumroad actually pays my bills every month. It's that's what does it for me.
And this is these are books that you created while you're in jail, or some of them you made afterward?
Well, this is what I did. Is they're mostly data collections where I just haven't had time to really turn them into real good full-fledged books. I just itemize all kinds of interesting data, compartmentalize them, put charts with them, and sell them in packs on Gumroad. All it is PDF files, and people love them. They get them all the time. And they go on Gumroad, they order the ones they want, and they instantly get them downloaded to their phones and tablets and computers. And I don't have to go through all the publishing expenses. If people really want copies, posters and all that, they can just take the charts because they're in a high definition PDF, and they can go to a print shop and give them a flash drive and just print them up.
Yep. Let me see if there's any other questions here.
Oh, I'm sure you're going to find some questions. I know who's in the chat. I see their names. They got questions.
Jason, have you changed your mind about what will happen in North America during the Phoenix?
No, I don't believe North America is in much danger except for the city of New York and the city of London. Both of them are near bodies of water. Both of them are very specifically mentioned by Nostradamus in the 2040 episode as being destroyed as well.
So still coastlines are dangerous, right? That's what I've always heard. Okay.
Yeah, coastlines are very dangerous. North America is going to continue. There are significant parts of the Gulf states that are going to go underwater. And I've been saying this since my first book was published in 2006. When I mentioned all the Phoenix fallout and destruction in 2040, there's going to be a 30-degree shift. And Canada is going to take the place of the United States. The United States is going to take the place of Mexico. Mexico is going to take the place of Southern Central America. The South America is going straight into the torrid, the frozen zones. But on the opposite side of the world, and it doesn't matter if you're a flat earther or if you believe in the heliocentric globe model, it doesn't matter what your paradigm is, the other side of the world, Australia, New Zealand is going to be shoved 30 degrees north into almost a paradise equatorial climate, while everything north of it is shoved. China's going to take the place of Russia, Siberia. Russia, Siberia is going straight into the Arctic, and the center of motion, the one area of the world that will not move as far as north or south by latitude, but will corkscrew sideways, is Egypt.
And is Egypt exactly in the center of what you're talking about in North America?
Exact center of pivoting.
So we're pivoting sideways. We're not pivoting like north to south on a supposed globe model, right? We're pivoting like sideways, looking straight at it.
Yeah, but on the globe model, it is. One side's going north, one side's going south.
Yeah.
But on a flat model, you're right. One side's going up, one side's going down. But it doesn't matter your paradigm. The effect is still the same.
And this is a simulated pole change you're talking about?
This is what's going to happen in 2040 when the Phoenix returns. This is a 30-degree shift in the lithosphere. Now, most of North America is going to be all right. Coastal cities going to be taken out below the 30-degree latitude parallel. And I've given a lot of information on this. The greatest amount of destruction and death is going to be located in the highest population areas. And this is basically Central Asia, China, Central Asia, all the way to maybe not too much India, but to the borders of India. That area is where we're going to get 90% of our human loss of 25%. Remember, the Phoenix is going to kill 25% of the human population, but 90% of that 25% is located in Asia.
Wow. And do you think people are aware there, or do you think they're just like lambs led to the slaughter?
You know what? I don't know, but I do know that there are a lot of people listening to my channel who are data mining. They're quiet. Sometimes I get emails from, I get questions from emails where, I know for a fact, 100% for a fact, that I have been in contact with an intelligence operative. Didn't really make it much of a secret. Not somebody faking it, somebody who actually gave me quite a bit of money to do something very, very simple. Just one simple little prediction. But
yeah.
I released a video about it. I'm not going to be secret about it. If I did not sign an NDE, then you can't expect me to shut my mouth. I'm just not going to. Now if somebody makes me sign an NDE, then I'm going to respect that because information was exchanged on the agreement that somebody would keep their mouth shut. I have no problem with doing that. But if it's not specifically asked of me, I'm not going to be quiet about it.
Yep. Couple more questions. Do you think they will pull an EMP?
I do have a video about a false Carrington event. It's based off date sequence prediction and isometric analysis for next year. It looks like next year lines up in the holography, and Square Peg Divergent has done a lot of follow-up research on that because I'm busy doing other things, but she has found even more isometric projections that show that next year is going to be some type of false Carrington event. They're going to say it's an X flare, they're going to say it's a solar flare or whatever, but they're going to use that to keep communications down for something.
So 2023?
2023, next year. They're
Okay.
going to use that event to keep to do an information blackout. So I show in my own video, I show the historical precedents, how we do the math to determine future events. I reveal all that. And like I said, Square Peg Divergent has done her own. She has taken up the torch and done her own little research. And from totally different isometric analysis projections, she has found the exact same thing. I found it pretty interesting. But you have to talk to her. She's in the comments. You have to talk to her to get her findings. She had sent them to me in graph form.
Right. I'm going to really quick. Does YouTube usually let you share links?
I don't know.
I'm gonna try sharing my email.
I get links in my comment section every day.
I'll put my email in the chat and also in the text box underneath the video once it's published. If anybody wants to reach out to me for whatever reason, it's basically GAPAWA1985@gmail.com. Do you know of Emily Moyer? Have you heard of Emily Moyer?
No.
Somebody
was a name I'm familiar with.
She's also up in this whole research scene, and she always talks about crazy coincidences and basically a person that can look at the reality with an open mind and try to interpret what's going on. So somebody was saying we should do a show with her, and you don't know her, so you can't really say whether you would like that or not. But I think
I'm not scared of her. If she wants to do a show with us, we can do one.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that would be a fun show. Her mind is very unique in how she's able to pull a bunch of seemingly obscure things into one sort of cohesive thing. Right.
Hey, I'm looking at the comment section. Operation End Times. I see you a lot on my channel. Listen, you're asking about 1962. Go to the bottom of any one of my videos, pinned comments, and ask me that in an email. I'm talking to Operation End Time. I will send you an actual article about 1962 that answers your question. way too much to talk about now.
Okay, yeah, That's why I was asking you 1962 because I saw his comment also. Could the pyramid weapon be broken because it was opened?
It could have. I really don't know. I mean, everything I've documented about the Great Pyramid is that is such a huge topic to even discuss in such an abbreviated time. I don't know if you're familiar with my pyramid studies.
I've actually been basically going backward through your videos, so what I've seen is what your last 15 to 20 or so, probably.
Yeah, those are my first video. Yeah, my first videos, I go into a lot of detail showing how major historical events, I show where we get the dates for those events, who published those dates, where they got their material from, and then I show you where those dates are in the Great Pyramid's rectilinear dimensions and how researchers 400 years ago were already theorizing that the measurements inside the Great Pyramid were a calendar of world history.
I see.
That's what they're referring to.
That's very interesting.
Oh, hey, the whole study is fantastic. I got about 31 or 32 videos in that playlist called the Lost Secrets of Giza, all about the Great Pyramid calendar, how it shows 2040. Oh, it's awesome. 2040 is everywhere in the Great Pyramid. Awesome.
I wanted to show you this real quick. I've pretty recently, like a year or two ago, I started reading this author called Terry Pratchett, and he makes a series called Discworld, and I'm on like book 7, book 8. But I wanted to show you this. This is book 7, I believe.
Oh wow!
And it's called Pyramids. You see what's coming out the top of it?
Something holographic, a staircase.
Something's coming out of it in the book.
Yeah.
In the book, the pyramids themselves gather energy. They gather energy from the people, and they store it inside of themselves, and they have to vent every single few days or months or something. And you hear them like venting off their extra energy. And also in this book, the people they build these, they have to hire guys to build the pyramids and the purpose for them is for the people to know is that, the king's goes in there and that's his home and whatnot. But the pyramid, it started screwing with the time-space continuum while they were building it, and it started duplicating things. It started duplicating the workers themselves, so they'd have like Ken 2, Ken 1, Ken 2, Ken 3, and then they all have to try to interact with each other. And it was just, the book it's like a fun book. It's not like a historical anything, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. And also at the end of the book, one of the pyramids like had a huge surge of energy and it moved it, kind of like what you were saying, what happened with the actual pyramid. So I was thinking maybe he was trying to give people hints or something about what was actually going on.
I mean, you know that the greatest truths are presented in fiction.
Yeah.
Always. I mean, and I don't want to offend anybody, but this is what the old Samaritan drama that was played out in a Greek amphitheater became. We turned it into the whole gospel. But from the beginning, the entire gospel is a series of Greek stage plays that were all presented in about a 3-hour period. This is why Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is written the way it is. It's all visual, and it's all actors coming in and out of scenes. This is why a 3.5-year period is compressed in just a few chapters in the book of Matthew. You are reading actual scenes of what people saw in a Samaritan amphitheater, which was Greek in the Decapolis. And this was originally the Gospel of Markian was a play. And it was a beautiful play. It was a play about the redemption of mankind. And this man spoke in parables and did all this stuff. Only as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John did the church introduce all kinds of interpolations that would satisfy all the pagan creeds that it was trying to absorb. All the Orphic models and Delphic models, all these things that were interjected, the book of John being to assuage the egos of the Gnostics. All the elements of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were created by the Roman papacy to bring in all these different cultures. But the original Q document, the original of the scholars, the original template was a Samaritan play. and it was done in a Greek amphitheater. And when you read the book of Matthew from that perspective, remember you're reading a play, and you'll never read the book of Matthew the same again. You'll see it. You'll see the stage plays. You'll see how everything's set up. It's all stage play. It's a Greek. You have to understand, this was the main form of entertainment for thousands of years. Amphitheaters. They had sound effects. They had guys hiding behind draperies with rocks simulating donkeys' feet. It was all stage play. And that's what this whole gospel is. This is what reality is. It is the perpetuations of fictions to create facts. Happens all the time.
So are you saying that this Messiah, you all need to be saved somehow narrative was created after the fact, and originally it was literally just some sort of entertainment?
Gary, if I'm going to assume that something external needs to save me, it means I'm in trouble now.
Yeah.
And I
of course.
And I don't believe that. I don't believe that no more.
I don't either. I'm trying.
I absolutely believe that I am much bigger than anything that can happen to me.
Yeah.
So AIX's control system is to try to get you to believe that in dying you need to fear some type of consequence. That's a perfect way to keep you in a reality tunnel, which costs it very little energy.
Yeah.
So if you're always conforming to a set form of protocols that society has given you, you're predictable. And a predictable human is a controllable human.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe that there's anything external for me that I need to fear. And I especially don't care about AIX telling me that I'm going to burn in hell if I don't believe in a loving God. That's a paradox. The conundrum itself is inexplicable.
Yeah.
A loving God is going to let me burn to death.
Yeah.
Look, once you start thinking outside the paradigm instead of from within it, it all's so silly. It's ridiculous. If
Yeah.
you're truly an immortal being, there is nothing. Like I tell people all the time, don't get depressed over the Archaix research. My conclusions are for the collective. They're not for you. Simple as that.
I got you. I'm not. I wasn't trying to say that you were trying to say that. I was trying to say, like, from whatever narrative is fed to the people about the Messiah thing, AIX took this screenplay about a guy who did what Jesus did, and then AIX turned that into a reality for the masses, where it told them they need to listen to this guy or go burn in hell. Like it amplified that story, basically.
But,
that screenplay.
First of all, it's not so simple as it being a Greek screenplay. That screenplay developed from the life of Apollonius of Tyana, who was a miracle worker, who is in the historical record, who did some amazing things and spoke some amazing things. When the Jews took the story of Apollonius Tyana and they rewrote it from a Semitic perspective into the Jesus narrative, it was from a Samaritan play. Well, the Samaritans were the ones that took that version and rewrote it to give themselves favor.
Mm.
This is why we had over 400 different Gospels in the first 300 years. It was the Roman Catholic Church that decided to officialize 4 versions: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All the others were discarded. This isn't me making this up. You can read the church councils. You can read all the historians from 500, 600, and 700 AD that talk about all these Gospels that were now omitted. They wouldn't even let them in the canon anymore. Books like Enoch, which were removed from the canon, not because of the content, but the actual church council that condemned the book of Enoch did so and published in their minutes that the book was too ancient to be taken seriously. So they removed it from the Bible. This was the book. This shows that the other books were not ancient. You follow me?
Right. Very interesting. So I wanted to ask you, do you in your story is the Jesus character the same thing as the benefactor, or are those not related whatsoever? Or Enki?
Okay, check this out. It doesn't matter if it's Enki, it doesn't matter if it's Loki, it doesn't matter if it's Thruda, it doesn't matter if it's Hermes Trismegistus. It doesn't matter if it's Jesus. The benefactor has always aided us, has always been there when we needed him most, and he always appears as a fiction. But it doesn't matter. It's because what is being taught is fact. We live in a world full of lies. Remember the mathematical demonstration I told you about, where we found out we're basically living in the photo-negative arithmetic, not the real universe. Same thing applies. That's why the greatest ways to convey truths today is through fictions. The media does it every single day. They don't report the truth, they manufacture it. By manufacturing the truth, they say a lie enough times to where enough people in the collective believe it, it becomes fact when it's reported 2 weeks later. This is how the media has been dealing with us over and over and over. They will elucidate over and over and over the same lie until it becomes the truth. It becomes knit into our reality, and we accept this. Well, the truth for spiritual beings is the same. It's just like Plato said. The shadows on the wall actually perceive themselves to be real, and they can hear other living beings, but they couldn't see them. They thought everybody was a shadow. We're the shadow people now.
Yeah, Plato's cave.
Yes, we are the lie. This isn't real. The real reality is outside of this construct, and as long as the benefactor is going to communicate to us through intuition, imagination, and empathy, he has to do so not directly through the images of this world. How are the greatest truths conveyed, Gary? They're done through similes. They're done through parables. They're done through images of truth, never the direct truth. You can't directly tell somebody a truth, something that is axiomatic, and get them to accept it. But if you tell them in a parable form, in the form of a story that plants a seed, you can just leave, because you just added information to their informed field, and it may take 2 or 3 days, it may take 2 or 3 months, but it's going to fester. It's going to grow. You basically entered in something that was a fiction because it's not literally real, and it becomes a fact for that person. It's the same thing with the benefactor. All these stories from the ancient world about a benefactor are real spiritually, but they're not real in actuality. They didn't actually happen.
I see. Is John from the play the same as John of Revelations?
Oh, talking about the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John was written to appease the Gnostics. It is the Gnostic. It is 100% the Gnostic Gospel. It's layered in Gnostic symbolism. The theory is that John, at 96 years old, on the Isle of Patmos, wrote the Book of Revelation. He had a vision. That's the theory. But historians over 100 years ago said that it was written by Cerinthus, who is a student of the Gnosis. And Cerinthus got much of those fragments from the older Sibylline oracles. Those Sibylline oracles were copied from the Orphic prophecies and the Delphic prophecies of ancient Greece, and it passed all the way from ancient Phoenicia. Very few people realize the Greek civilization came from the Middle East. They were Phoenicians. They only became Greeks later in history. But it's the same people, same bloodline, same all that. They were Phoenicians. So, you know what? I could just call them Israelites. It's the same thing. All throughout history, the term Phoenician is nothing but it specifies Israelite. Israelites were not what any one nation in history was ever called. They were actually called the House of Qumri, House of Omri, the Phoenicians, the Aramites, but in the biblical context, they're Israelites.
Okay. I try to absorb all these different terms, and some of them stick, and some of them it's just like try to remember it for later to try and figure out more about it.
I get that. Hey, I can send you a PDF that has all the archaic terms, definitions, and I did a video of it, but I often send the PDF file to people who want to familiarize themselves with what a reality tunnel is, what a reset is, what the difference between an edit and a reset. I have a list of quantifiable terms and definitions.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could send me that.
Yeah, I'll send that to you after the video.
We'll take a long time to ingest. or for me to retain information, like I said, I have to go over it multiple times. And if I see the same information in a completely different setting, like outside of our conversation, I see it somewhere else, then it starts cementing it in my mind.
Yeah, that's how you research. You always got to find collaboration. You always got to find something that's going to be associative.
Yep, I'm trying to see if there's anything else in my notes that I wanted to talk about or ask you about. I have stuff on collapsing the waveform, but I think you've probably already talked about that quite a bit. The idea of, like the double slit experiment, you've probably heard of that before, right?
Of course, it's famous.
Yeah. So is that how you see manifesting happening? Is it comes from our minds first, and then as we focus outward, then we sort of, I think of it as like one of those mind games. What's it called? Where the squares are all covered till you like hit them with your mouse, and then it opens up and you start seeing it after that. I kind of think of that how that's how the reality is.
Well, I tend to. Personalities are so distinctive, so they're so different. I tend to believe that we're personalities, which are nothing but information fields. The mind soul aspect, it's spiritual. Like I told you, the three spiritual qualities that make us so different from this whole reality that we're experiencing is the fact that we can imagine things. That empathy, the empathy is the ability to imagine a emotion that something else apart from us is experiencing. And the greatest of all is intuition, which I often say is the predecessor of knowledge, because it is. We always intuit or suspect something is true before we find evidence that it is. Now, sometimes that's confirmation bias, but often intuition is just being a great teacher. So these three spiritual qualities identify Jason completely separate from everything that Jason is experiencing. Meaning that because thought is the only thing that a spirit can do, it's the only thing that an immortal that is trapped in an avatar can do, then my entire life must be governed by it. Because it's the only thing it's the only byproduct of being spiritual, is thinking. Mm-hmm. So if I'm thinking things into existence by virtue of imagination, and my intent is to have things done, well, it has been my personal experience that thinking alone only creates data fields. Data fields create data sets in the holography, but nothing is transformative. Nothing ever happens. I must physically have a motive force. I must move my avatar in the direction of which I'm thinking. And then all of a sudden, reality reciprocates. It's almost instant. Now all of a sudden, things are knit into my experience to comport with whatever I'm doing. Because the simulacrum cannot read my mind. It can only read my endorphin levels, cortisol levels, and my physical activity and extrapolate what I'm trying to do. When it extrapolates, it's highly intelligent. It can basically understand the direction of my movement, so it creates that reality for me. Sometimes it gets it wrong, and I experience something very unusual in my life. But as soon as it realizes that I know something is unusual in my life, it reknits the holography, and all of a sudden I'm left with the sensation of deja vu, or synchronicity, or coincidence, or did I just see that? Or I know this ain't happening like this, and then all of a sudden 2 minutes later I'm thinking, ain't nothing happened. What am I tripping on? And just keep on going about in my own direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's the breaking pattern aspect. It's very simple. You're a spirit, so you think things into existence, but you can't make those things happen until you actually follow through. Your avatar, which is the only thing that the simulacrum can read, must do something, because you're an immortal spirit and AIX can't read your mind. You are a mystery to AIX. You are in your own holography inside of AIX. Therefore, it must watch you and observe you. If you don't start doing something, it can't predict your behavior based off thought. Well, so you think things into existence, and then you do a physical follow-through. As you're doing the physical follow-through, you're creating a holographic template of basically a reality tunnel going in certain directions it can predict. And it will start knitting for you those things, because what you physically do, it automatically assumes to be true. Mm-hmm. Just like I said earlier, if you're sitting in front of a screen, bored as hell and depressed, then that is the reality it will continue to knit for you until you break pattern.
I wonder if you could go out, go out on a street corner with a mic and, just imagine that you're talking to a bunch of people and they're all listening to you and just start doing it and believe it. And I wonder if people would come congregate because you knew that was going to happen. It'd be interesting to perform experiments.
I can't see them not coming to see what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
That would be fun.
Out of curiosity, they're going to come.
Yeah.
But I have to break things down to the lowest common denominators, and in the lowest common denominators, what I have found to be true is that basically I am living on a daily basis whatever I believed the day before I was going to do. This has been my belief. I mean, I can even break it down to individual events in prison, going to prison and everything, man. I did it to myself, 100%. It was only after I experienced the events, because the greatest truths are also found in retrospect. We learn better ex post facto than we do in the moment. In the moment, details are always missed, but ex post facto, we get them. And, there's another saying. I know you're familiar with. I can't remember the saying. Hindsight's 20/20. Things in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No doubt.
Who do you believe took the missing parts from the Great Pyramid?
I can tell you that one. There are traditions about Zu in the Sumerian records. Zu, they blame him for stealing the tablets of destinies out of E-Kur. And I show in 2 different videos, I show that the Sumerian E-Kur is an actual reference to the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
E-Kur.
But yeah, E-K-U-R. It housed the tablet of destinies, and a god named Zu appeared and stole those tablets of destinies and caused all kinds of chaos. Now, because a patriarchal civilization wanted to blame the early matriarchal civilization, they created the Pandora's box scenario. But the original god that did the theft and opened the box to steal the tablets of destinies was actually a male.
Okay. Please describe, Jason, organic and inorganic in the realm. How would you distinguish those?
I mean, I don't really understand the question. If organic and inorganic are still just 2 different phases of the same thing, which would be coding protocols.
Mm-hmm.
If everything is coded, it can be coded. It can be coded to be interpreted as organic, or it can be coded to be interpreted as holographic. It can be coded to be interpreted as ethereal or astral or mental. When we're dealing with coding, and we're in the inside of a programmed illusion, then it doesn't really matter if it's organic or physical, because anything that we magnify is just going to dissolve into an oscillating field. It doesn't matter if it's physical or organic. If you put something under a microscope, it becomes the exact same thing.
Yeah, basically, if you're trying to ask questions about what's real or not real, or organic or not organic in here, like Jason said, it's really all illusory because we're in here, but at the same time, you believe, and I feel the same way, that actual spirited beings that are in here are the only thing that is real in here, and everything else around us is the screen that's being helped to be produced by the AIX, right?
We are living out the Samaritan play right now. We're living it out.
This is kind of a funny question. How can we get rid of AIX monitoring?
I'm sorry, but I think that was already taken care of when the Great Pyramid was activated. I show in all my videos the structuring. The arithmetic of the Great Pyramid reveals that it was a weapon designed to attack the holography, to actually cause a systemic collapse in the far future. Basically, the whole idea was the architect himself had entered into the simulacrum, basically in a far future date, to set the captives free, because we had originally signed up for this. But in that capacity, it's also a very Christian notion, but the Christians borrowed it from the Gnostics, and the Gnostics borrowed it from the Orphic and the Delphic belief systems. But it's the chief cornerstone is the head of the corner. He's the top of the Great Pyramid. It's why the Great Pyramid in Egypt does not have a cornerstone. No one could have physically put one up there because of the size of it. It would have been monumental.
That's the very top one, the very little top triangle that would be up there.
But it only looks tall because, listen, you're talking about a building of solid stone that's 203 levels of blocks that are 5 tons each that goes up so high in the sky to 454 feet high. But if that capstone was put there, it would be exactly 481 feet high. There hasn't been a stone that big manufactured in the world to put on top of that pyramid. It's huge. So,
you think that's coming back though? That's the signifier that we're gonna be released.
In the eschatological narratives, the chief cornerstone is the stone the builders rejected. The builders are the archons. They are the coding protocols that put this false world together. This false world is governed by, like in the New Testament, it's explained. The Christian writers are not wrong. They say that this world is a product of the God of this world. The God of this world is evil. He is basically the mastermind architect of this world. This is a very Christian notion too. Christians believe that Satan was the god of this world. Satan is the adversary.
Yeah, like the demiurge, right? Like the
100%. It is artificial intelligence.
Sophia's ill-begotten son that she's ashamed of, so she had to hide him.
Yes, the benefactor has appeared by many different figures in history, but the enemy Archaix has also appeared. You know, in Zoroastrianism, he was Ahriman. In the Old Testament, he was Yahweh. He was the bloodthirsty god of murder. Mm-hmm. In the book of Numbers, in the book of Joshua, book of Deuteronomy, yeah, Yahweh was a terrible god. You read the verses about him, and there's no and you'll never doubt when you read the Old Testament why the Israelites always bucked, because the Israelites were not going to follow a Jewish god. Over and over, the Israelites were punished because they wouldn't follow Yahweh. Yahweh was always sticking it to them.
He was bloodthirsty. No doubt about it, he was bloodthirsty. They had to sacrifice to him all the time. They had to keep him happy, and he was just always angry.
Yeah, this is why there was a split in the Jewish priesthood. I mean, there's a split in the ancient priesthoods. All throughout the Old Testament, you have two different versions of reality. One version is the Jewish through the Levite priesthood. The other version is the Aaronic, which is the Israelite priesthood. This is why all throughout the Old Testament, you have two versions for almost every story. Whenever it says a story in the Old Testament, you can find somewhere in the Old Testament where that same story is told, but from a different perspective.
Jason, we're coming up on a minute left, and they're going to kick us off again. So if you want to wrap or
this is going to have to be a wrap. That was our fourth one, and
we're wrapping now. But I'm just letting you know, like if you have any closing remarks or whatever.
No, I mean, everybody knows they can send me emails. I answer my emails as best as I can, or comments. The deal. I'll post this on my own channel too, Gary.
Okay, and, we'll get back together in the future. I'll do some of that research you're talking about, and we'll have another one.
Yeah, look at that 1890, man. I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, Jason, and for hanging out, and thank you everybody for also hanging out with us.
Alrighty.
See you next time. Okay.